5 p.m. on November 2nd, 2021. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Cupertino City Council for this date. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call?
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Willie? Vice Mayor Chow?
I'm here.
Mayor Paul?
And I'm here. I'll note for the record that Councilmember Willie did show up and state that he's here.
Here.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and report out on our closed session that we had earlier this evening. That was at 5 p.m. It was a special meeting. Let me get the language precisely. I had written this down. The one and only item was noticed as public employee appointment under Government Code Section 54957B, title City Manager. There is no reportable action at this time. And so we are on to the first item on our agenda, but let me take a quick look at that agenda just to make sure that I'm not skipping anything. We have ceremonial matters and presentations at this point. Item number 1 is a presentation from United Against Hate and a proclamation recognizing November 14th through the 20th, 2021 as United Against Hate Week. Appreciations to the Office of the Mayor of the City of Berkeley for putting forward this effort. As part of the ABAG representatives for the Bay Area, I've been able to see Mayor Arreguín in action. He's, I believe, chairing that organization this year, and I believe for the next term as well. And so he's been, trying to, I think, put forward some really positive, statements and consolidation of support in the aftermath of a number of movements in the last couple of years. There was the Me Too movement, there was Black Lives Matter, there's Stop Asian Hate. And I think we can all generally agree that, a lot of these types of, sentiments that are, rather gratuitous and hurtful are really not necessary, in order to move forward the conversation in just almost every respect. And so we do have a representative from the mayor's office from Berkeley here, Jacqueline McCormick. Jacqueline, welcome to Cupertino via Zoom. Thank you for being here this evening. Did you want to provide a presentation before we present the proclamation for United Against Hate Week?
Yes, I'd love to share my screen if I could, but first I have to say hello to Christopher Jensen, your fabulous city attorney, who you happen to take from Berkeley, sadly, for us.
Well, thank you for...
It's been a while.
Hi, Jack. It's really good to see you here. Michael Wu is also, who just joined our office, is also present.
You took him too.
So I had to mention that. But yeah, it's really great. Thank you for coming. It's really great to see you.
Great. Okay. Well, I was asked to put this just brief presentation together. I'd be happy to share it with you. There we go. And let me start. I've got to move this over here. Okay. Out of nowhere, things happen that change our personal lives, and some of these things can change us forever. And for me, personally, what started out as being a very simple poster campaign has become a movement. Again, I thank you so much for letting me share tonight. The United Against Hate campaign provides communities with support and a network of resources to respond to hate when it happens, but most importantly, to build inclusion and equity for all and to keep it from happening in the first place. So, I just wanted to share this little, I think it'll come up. Are you seeing the video?
Yes, we are.
Groundswell of excitement.
It's a huge pile.
You see them in the kindergarten classroom.
Just warms my heart. We can't let it slide away.
Great. I'm gonna run back to this now. Okay, go away. Stop. There you go. Why am I not going back? Sorry, guys. I'm gonna stop sharing and go back. All right, I'm not going to share screen anymore. There we go. All right, thanks. Anyway, those people around that table were the members of the first 13 communities that engaged in United Against Hate Week, and that was back in 2017. The effort and the movement has grown to this year having over 100 communities and organizations up here in the Bay Area participating, and it's the second year that Los Angeles County has taken this on. We've also grown nationally, organically. This year, there are going to be events in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bloomington, Illinois, Bowling Green, and at Rutgers College. And there are also a smattering of smaller communities throughout the whole entire California region that are also contributing to United Against Hate Week. State Attorney General Ron Bonta is going to be promoting the event and providing special messages throughout the week. And with the rising hate crimes, the need for action could not be more clear. We have so much at stake. What started this was in 2017 when there were a bunch of protests coming to Berkeley after the tragic events of Charlottesville. Our city leaders in Berkeley and throughout the Bay Area were preparing for yet another bunch of group rallies, and as in Berkeley, and Chris was there, we were terrified for the safety of our community. We needed to do something, and we needed to do something that was positive, that would allow people to come and engage or to stay home and engage and send a message and make an important statement that hate has no place in Berkeley. So with the mayor's support, we created those Berkeley Stands United Against Hate signs, and in just a day, Oakland joined us. And by the time we were done, as I said, by the time the visitors came to town, there were 13 communities who had individual signs printed too. Between Berkeley and Oakland alone, we printed 40,000 signs, 20,000 for each city, and in Berkeley, those signs were gone in a day. In 2018, Not in Our Town reached out to us and wanted to bring those communities together, and that was the point of bringing in that roundtable. They wanted to do a podcast about how we came up with this idea, and because it's another example of what communities can do to support each other when hate happens. And at the end of that meeting, Patrice O'Neill, who is the chairman of Not in Our Town, asked us if we wanted it to be a one-time event or if it was something that we wanted to have last longer. And we all determined to a person that we wanted to start United Against Hate Week, and 2018 was the first year that we did it. Some of the results that we had from our second year, from film showings and some of the forums and panels that we had, showed that through these events, you can see some of the slides up here, but we have them also on our website, the outcomes from these. 96% of the people said they're more likely to stand up to hate. The impact of the film was incredible, up at 98%. And people even understood well in the 90th percentile of how important standing up to hate was and understanding what we have to do in our communities to fight against it. So we've been growing, as I said, to over 100 communities in the Bay Area alone. Los Angeles has grown. Attorney General Bonta's supporting us, and our goal is to increase visibility and just participation, not just in California, but we really would love to see this grow nationally. So what does United Against Hate Week do? We provide a central platform for local communities to engage and have events, and we can provide toolkits and ideas for folks to do things. Community members are able to find ways to participate and plug in through our calendar. It allows organizations and communities to share ideas with each other. And that's basically what it is. Again, we're so grateful for Cupertino's engagement in this. And I really hope that this is the first of many years of sharing that you participate in, and that it's not just during the week that we do this work, it's during the week that we provide the visibility and focus on the importance of this, and the work is done throughout the rest of the year to ensure that we're building the kind of networks that we need to, again, stop hate from happening and to be able to respond when it does. So grateful for your proclamation and for your participation. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And Madam City Clerk, did you want to share the proclamation on your screen for a moment before we?
Yes, Mayor, can you see that?
Yes, we can. Okay, great. So, thank you very much for all the excellent efforts here. I also hope that this is the beginning of a long and productive collaboration, and thank the City of Berkeley for initiating this and congratulate you on your 4th year in bringing this forth to, all the various communities and, not just the ones that need it, because we all need it, frankly, but, sticking with it and making sure that this grows and expands. I will note that I believe Los Gatos is having an event regarding United Against Hate fairly soon. And so, once again, on behalf of the community and our city council, thank you very much for being here this evening, and hopefully we'll be working together for many years to come.
I hope so too. And if you want to know what's going on around the Bay, go to unitedagainsthateweek.org and you can check out the calendar.
Absolutely. And just to let you fine folks in Berkeley know that Cupertino is always looking for excellent staff. So,
Okay. We're done sharing.
All right. Very good. Well,
Thanks very
at least
much.
as far as that goes.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for the nice words about the mayor. I will share this with him.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great night. All right, so now we're on to item number 2. This is a proclamation recognizing November as Lung Cancer Awareness Month. It is something that we had recognized last year. That is true, but is also something that is extremely topical. We want to make sure that, we all stay healthy and aware, especially in these times when cardiorespiratory issues, of course, they're always important, right? I mean, everyone has a heart that beats and, lungs that breathe, but at the same time, especially during these times when we have a cardiorespiratory affected pandemic, going into all of society, all of the planet for the second year now, we just need to be particularly cognizant of these types of issues. We have Sankavi Kuhan, and I apologize if I didn't quite get the pronunciation of the name correctly, but she'll be receiving a proclamation on behalf of the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative. And so thank you very much for being here. Did you want to make a few remarks or perhaps even a presentation with regard to Lung Cancer Awareness Initiative?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say a few remarks. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you so much for having me here at your meeting. And on behalf of Elsie, thank you so much, Mayor Paul, City Councilman, and the City of Cupertino for this proclamation recognizing November as Lung Cancer Awareness Month. So Elsie is a team of physicians and students working to spread awareness and promote lung cancer screening for people who are high risk for developing lung cancer. And lung cancer is currently the second most common cancer in the United States and the leading cause of death among men and women in the US, accounting for more deaths than breast cancer, colon cancer, and prostate cancer combined. Currently, most lung cancers are diagnosed at a late stage. For example, 64% of lung cancer cases are diagnosed at stage 3 or stage 4, and only 25% of lung cancers are diagnosed at stage 1. Therefore, increasing the number of lung cancers diagnosed at an early stage through lung cancer screening is key to saving lives. Therefore, I just want to thank you all again for this proclamation, your support, and encouraging all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. So thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Sankavi, and we really appreciate you being here and helping us to let people know that an ounce of prevention and screening is worth a pound of cure, as we've learned in many contexts in Cupertino. So here's the proclamation. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk, for putting it up here, and we'll recognize this for November 2nd, 2021, and this is Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Cupertino. So thanks very much for all the work that you and the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative do as well to make us all aware of the importance of that prevention and the screening to make sure that our collective and individual health are preserved. So, all right, thank you very much. We'll go on.
Good
Yes.
evening, everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Have a great evening.
Mayor Paul, I do see one raised hand.
I see that as well. So let's see. It is from Paul Soto. So Paul, I'm going to go ahead and go on to oral communications right after postponements and orders of the day. So postponements and orders of the day have to do with essentially any request to reorder items on the agenda. Are there any requests to do that from council I don't see any hands raised from any of the council members, and so we'll go on to oral communications, unless, Madam City Clerk, there are any postponements, or Mr. City Manager, are there any postponements off the agenda as it currently sits?
No postponements, Mayor.
Okay, excellent. Let's go on to oral communications. And oral communications are for any communications to council and the public that have to do with an item that is not agendized. And so members of the public are free to speak to the agendized items at the time that we reach them on the agenda. But for any non-agendized items, this is what oral communications is for. I see 4 hands raised from members of the public. And so I'll just remind everyone that as soon as the first member of the public gets done speaking, you'll have to have your hand raised in order to be put into the queue to speak under oral communications. So at this time, there are actually 8 hands. I'll go ahead and read these out. Paul Soto, Jennifer Griffin, Muni Matapatla, Peggy Griffin, Bindia Abinker, Lisa Warren, Tracy J, and Leon Lee. And so welcome, Paul. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I want to talk about, I was in attendance at the San Jose City Council meeting today, and they were talking about COVID relief funds that they were going to allocate. In the language, the marketing language, because these authors of these memos, they take certain types of social psychology classes, they take marketing classes, which basically marketing is just basically mass psychology and mass hypnosis. That's really the actual goal, is the hypnosis part. So the person doesn't access their compassion centers. It doesn't allow the penetration of truth to inoculate the human being from being inhumane. Let me give you an example. When you could see the word proximity between talking about homelessness, low-income parents, people of less means, and then SJPD, rape, public safety, you had the word associations and the word clusters so closely that it could only be by design. And this is where the racism and the hate still permeates and pervades our society. But you see, we're not aware of it because we haven't created the language we can articulate it clearly, and it's not a debatable issue. Truth is not debatable. You could debate facts, but you cannot debate truth. And truth, I would venture so far as to say, can be most aptly vocalized by the people that have incurred the generational traumas and injustices that are associated with this virus that is inserted in our policies. So until we get to that point in our human evolution, which I really actually think we're devolving because we're becoming more inhumane, because we will talk nonchalantly and objectify human beings and their suffering and use policy as an issue as to why we're not doing one thing or another. We don't wrestle with the moral or ethical question. And I think that if we're going to start talking about equity, we're going to start talking about social justice, then we really have to get comfortable with becoming extremely uncomfortable and start humbling ourselves and really taking concrete action to insert true equity within the context of public policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And now we have 8 total speakers. Amy Pang is our last speaker, and the rest are as read off previously. Next, we have Muni Matapatla. Welcome, Muni.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. My name is Muni Matapatla. I'm a Cupertino resident, also serving on the Planning Commission. But I'm here speaking on my behalf as an individual and resident, not in any other capacity. Recently, I learned from parents that CSD board has decided to close quite a few schools in our city, in our neighborhood, and distribute the kids, from closed schools to the remaining schools within the city. I wonder if they did any CEQA study and traffic impact analysis of their decisions, as I expect, increased traffic within the city as a result of their decisions. And just to give an example, right? So, because I have the most experience with this area, the location where we have Lincoln, Kennedy, and Monte Vista, that place during school beginning and closing time, it's like a zoo. Lot of kids, parents crisscrossing, and it's very difficult. Now, if Reginald is going to be closed, all those parents, going from that area towards Lincoln is going to be a big challenge, right? Because, there's traffic going towards Kennedy and people from that side, coming towards, Lincoln, and it's going to be a pretty tough situation. So as a concerned resident, I would like the council to stand up for the community and challenge, CUSD board decision to close schools without, proper traffic analysis and CEQA study, right? So I would really appreciate, if city council can take this up and work with the CUSD board to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mooney. Our next speaker is Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin. Let's just talk about SB 10. It's not agendized tonight. I just had a couple of comments. SB 10 is one of the housing bills. I think it allows you to split a lot up into 10 housing units. Where are we going to get the parkland to accommodate these new people? The cities are trying very hard to purchase parkland or have it donated. We can't even keep up with the parkland for the people we have now in the city. Nowhere in the legislature or the governor have they talked about how we're supposed to accommodate parkland for these new people. It's basically split up the lots, put in all these people, and we have no parkland. Plus, the parkland that's here is going to be further used by the people that are trying to use it. I think we need to stop the charades of SB 10 and start talking about the logistics of the supply chain of this. How do we get parkland? Where is the governor coming? Where is Senator Cortese? Where is Evan Lowe coming from? I mean, this is the reality check. The other thing I'm going to mention here is, for the last 2 to 3 years, we have had housing bills rolled out from Sacramento. That's fine. Okay. It's pointing fingers at the neighborhoods. Okay. But I do not think that it is appropriate to hang the term racist along with the housing bills and dump it all on everyone that happens to live in neighborhoods. That term is insulting to everyone. I have many different ethnic backgrounds in my family, probably 7. And I can tell you that a bulk of them came to this country for religious freedom. And in some cases, that's only 2 to 3 generations back. You can use the term racism however you wish, but do not accuse my grandparents and great-grandparents who were Irish, who came over here as laborers and miners, that they are racist. Because these people have no comprehension of the treatment of Catholics and Protestants here in Canada and in Ireland. I have Griffin is a clan in Ireland, and there are both Catholic and Protestant relatives in Canada and Ireland. And I can tell you, it is brutal. I have other relatives who came in for religious reasons 2 to 3 generations back. And then there's Virginia. We have Huguenots. We have French refugees from Catholic France. To lay on a term like racial in terms of housing bills is an insult to anyone in this state that came into this state as.
Jennifer, you're at 3 minutes. So thank you very much, Jennifer. And next we have Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Mayor Paul, City Council, and staff. I'm speaking on 2 topics, and the first slide is right there. This slide is a map of our general plan figure LU2 community form diagram. Last week, I attended the ERC meeting, and I was shocked to find out that the city is not requiring a general plan amendment for the Beda Brothers project. It is in direct conflict with so many of our general plan goals, policies, and strategies, not to mention the land use definition for the parcels. This decision, if allowed to stand, will set a precedent that puts all our neighborhood.
What's good? It's your boy Benny Nose.
Commercial centers at risk of disappearing. Our city has lost so much retail, and decisions like this go against the guiding principles of sustainability and health of both our people and our communities. On December 17th, I sent the City Council an email and presented during oral communications regarding this issue. Nothing happened. I sent you all another email yesterday with specific points. I'm begging you to move fast, and if you can't stop this from happening, at least prevent it from reoccurring again, now. Next topic, next slide, please. Resolution 12098 was the Main Street approval requirements. The Target Express site is described in the ASA as Building 6, 21,000 square feet for major retail. Also on page 4, item 9 specifies that no more than 40% of the total retail space shall be restaurants. The Target Express site was sold to the public, especially those close by, as a place to buy groceries or maybe a pharmacy. But I'm hearing it's going to be a large banquet hall, another restaurant. Next slide, please. I'm asking, is a banquet hall being considered? If so, does it cause the total restaurant space to exceed 40% of the retail space? If so, has there been a subsequent parking and traffic analysis done as specified in item 9 of this resolution? And it's specific to what numbers you compare it to. If so, where are the documents? I and many others are frustrated at what appears as the lack of following and enforcing our general plan and project plan agreements passed as resolutions. Please fix this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And next we have Bindia Abinkar. Welcome, Bindia.
Hello. Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. My topic is around stop closing schools in Cupertino. I am Regnat and Kennedy parent. The decision that the board made on October 14th was heartbreaking, and the entire Regnat community is disturbed. We are still in pandemic and families have lost their dear ones. They are going through a lot of emotional challenges, and getting through this school closure topic is adding more challenges. So looking at the real facts, there is no real need or valid reason to close the schools. And here are the 4 main reasons. Fact 1, board said that they are closing the schools because of declining enrollment. Honestly, closing schools will not fix the declining enrollment, as it has a long-term impact. It will prevent the new families from moving into the neighborhood. Number 2, this is around the infrastructure. Board made a decision to consolidate Regnat into Lincoln and Blue Hills. Just looking at the Blue Hills infrastructure, the infrastructure is not ready. They are spending about $4.2 million to modernize the school, while Regnat doesn't need any modernization. It's perfect and it can accommodate more students in case if we see an increase in enrollment. So having this modernization is adding actually no benefit. Number 3, this is around the safety. Consolidating the schools during pandemic will increase the safety risk for kids. Also, the traffic. The traffic is going to be an issue, and kids' safety is a big concern. We in Regnat ran a preliminary traffic study and saw an increase in 70% in our commute time, with only 20% people participating in this, which means that extrapolating the data with 100% participation, it's going to be worse. And board made a decision without actually doing a thorough traffic study. Number 4, this is around the cost analysis. There is going to be an additional cost in the operating by consolidating the schools. Just by doing the basic math, it shows that there is an increase in about $300K per year in the operating cost. And what board mentioned was there is a saving of $500K by closing one school. The delta is actually not that much, so there is no actual need to close the schools. If the goal is to generate revenue by leasing Regnat or even Mayor Hose, then board's priority is not keeping kids as a priority, and the priority is something different. They also have opened a new position to hire an associate superintendent in CUSD while they are closing the schools, which means that they have less schools, but they need more people to manage, which absolutely doesn't make any sense. So overall, my request here to the council is to really challenge the Cupertino School District and stop closing schools and look for alternatives to fix our core problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindia. Our next speaker is Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Well, Peggy, I might not run out of my 3 minutes because Peggy addressed my main concern for tonight, which is this is probably my 6th, maybe 7th time speaking of this in either a planning commission or city council meeting. And I guess what I really want is answers. I want someone to need to answer me and all the other people concerned about the same thing. So everything that Peggy said about Main Street and the amount of restaurants that should be allowed in there based on resolution 12098, which was actually from September 2012, after a huge bait and switch from the original project that was approved in December of 2008 or early 2009. They waited for 3 years without doing anything, they being Sand Hill. Sound familiar? Then suddenly they want to change everything. They doubled the amount of office space. They took away part of the project that the community had really bought into in 2008 when there were community sessions. So we already had a bait and switch. I believe it was the last city council meeting where we had staff admit that there was a mistake made when they allowed architectural features that are not supposed to be occupied, and they're occupied. That's also at Main Street in the offices. I'm really finding it hard to swallow yet another potential takeaway from the community and give away to the developer. Now, at one point, building number 6 was labeled by Michael Chan, I believe his name was, the architect, as being food green in color, some of the accent colors. I said, so what's the food green? Oh, well, because they were trying to get a small grocery, Sprouts perhaps, but as I understand it, they missed out on that opportunity. Target was what they got. I, for one, think it would be a complete, I don't know, a dereliction if staff thinks that a 21,000 square foot building can be occupied by yet another restaurant when I believe the development is already at its maximum of close to 53,000 square feet in food service restaurants. So I really am tired of repeating myself, and I would like to know what's happening because I know I'm from industry that there really is a threat of this, and yet no one's fessing up. So please, thank you.
It. You're welcome. Our next speaker is Tracy J. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, City Council members, for your time. With one hastily made decision, CUSD is about to tear down decades worth of brand equity and good reputation built up in Regnart, Meyerholtz, and Muir. I say brand equity and reputation because closing schools is damaging not only to the school district, but also to Cupertino. Closing schools sends a strong message to the community at large that Cupertino doesn't have enough money and that it's not investing properly in its schools. Because how can Cupertino be affluent while its schools are languishing? Our good reputation as a city is inevitably tied to our schools. We know CUSD does have enough money to keep schools open, but in closing them, it's signaling to the community that it doesn't. When families evaluate future locations to live, Cupertino might not be their top choice anymore, with the worry of school closures or lack of funding hanging over their heads. Our property values won't appreciate as quickly. Compare our district to other top school districts which are not struggling with school closure issues, despite far smaller populations. If we look at the numbers, CUSD has 14,000 students. It claims declining enrollment is a problem. Palo Alto Union School District only has 11,000 students, which includes middle and high school. Saratoga has 1,700 students in K through 8. Would it really be a bad thing to have fewer students? Clearly, our district is already large compared to others. Ultimately, there's no good reason why Regnart should close, financially or operationally. Please, City Council, I'm respectfully asking you to help stop CUSD from closing schools before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Our next speaker is Leon Lee. Welcome, Leon.
Hi, Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi, I'm a Cupertino resident since 2019. I sincerely ask for your help supporting protecting Regnard. We have a first grader and a second grader attending Regnard. They love going to Regnard every day, where they can safely walk to without crossing major intersections, where they have their best friends and beloved teachers, where they feel they belong to the community. Their hearts were broken when they heard the news that the CUSD school board had decided to close Regnard. We could not accept the decision, and we do not agree with the process and their approaches. Here are a couple of reasons. The first is about low enrollment. The main reason claimed by CUSD to close schools is low enrollment. We demand CUSD to have thorough study on how many families with school-aged children reside in the district, how many of them are choosing private schools or alternative schools over neighborhood schools. We have heard a lot of overflow in CUSD before moving to Cupertino. And if there is a drop of enrollment, we need a clear study on if that is just back to normal or the enrollment is truly too low. I have known multiple families who choose to drop out of Regnard because they keep hearing about school closure and they lost confidence and trust to the school board. I also know families who were turned away because overflow. Closing school is the easiest thing to do, but that will further damage parents' trust to the board. I am worried that if more and more families choose to leave the district, the board will just continue to close more schools. And that seems to be the only solution that they would have. The second point is about budget feasibility. CUSD can afford to keep schools open. Since the 5-year budget projection for 2021 2022 shows a picture better than any other year in the last decade. That is because the governor not only provided full funding to schools, but also provided extra funding for the 1,400 students who left CUSD after the pandemic. The other side is the financial issue is how the board spends money. There were multiple requests from the community for CUSD to publish ratio of staff to students. We still don't get any data. The very next discussion item in a board meeting that decides to close 3 neighborhood schools is to hire a new executive with close to $400K salary. That clearly reflects how CUSD would like to spend its limited budget. Students or teachers seems to be of the lowest priority in their list. So in summary, I sincerely request City Council to help us protect the Regnard and to rebuild our confidence to the school.
Thank you very much. Our next and last speaker is Amy Peng. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, board. Thank you for letting me speak. So I'm speaking again tonight to really talk to the Cupertino board and talk about the decision that CUSD board made to close schools about a little 2 weeks ago. As a Regnard parent, I have 2 children and I'm also a Regnard alumni. I moved back to Cupertino specifically to attend the schools in Cupertino because they are one of the best ranked schools in Bay Area. These past 2 years, obviously with COVID, have been very difficult for our children. They're struggling with catching up, and now we're adding the burden of closing schools. The kids understand that they're closing their schools are going to end up being closed, and it's causing a huge mental health dilemma with them because not only are they having to deal with the COVID, everything with COVID and masks, they're also now having to deal with closing schools. And I really wonder if, the board thought about this as they were making their decisions. To split Regnard in half, it really doesn't make any sense. All the traffic that's going to end up going to Lincoln will be horrible because you're going to have parents that will be driving to Kennedy, Monte Vista, and De Anza, and Apple offices by next year. And we'd like to understand why CUSD still has not started a traffic study. I believe that was requested a couple times in the board meetings, but I don't believe that that's never taken place. Closing CUSD elementary schools is causing a negative impact in the community. More parents are actually making decisions to pull their kids out of school and sending them to private school, or they're moving completely out of Cupertino because they're afraid of what is going to happen to CUSD and the school districts around. the parents of Cupertino have actually brought to the board many different ideas that include the possibility of turning Regnar into an alternative magnet school, but the board would not accept that decision. We also, our PTA for Regnar had worked with CUSD. I believe that we took about a month, and we actually were able to gain a lot of donations. I believe it was something like 100 grand. But again, CUSD was not impressed with us working to try to get donations. One thing we've asked the board to do is really put themselves in our children's shoes. And tonight I'm asking you to do the same. They've dealt with so much these past 2 years. Nothing is normal, and their mental health is really being tested to the limit. I'm begging the board to give these kids another chance to reconsider not closing their schools. Right now, I have one child in 3rd grade, and I have a second that's in 3rd grade. So my 3rd grader is the only one that's ever had one true year in elementary school. My 2nd grader has never had a true year in elementary school. Our children are living in a pandemic, and these 2 years have caused them to miss friends, miss family, and a closed world, basically. I'm urging you to put yourselves in our children's school and help us rethink about the school closure schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We'll bring this back up to council. What I can say to our remaining hands raised is that, as I have announced consistently throughout this year, you'll have to have your hands raised before we have the first speaker done in a particular item. However, for oral communications, if there is time remaining and there are people that are still wanting to speak, we do have an item at the very end that will allow us to go to back to oral communications if you wish. And so we'll go on to item number 3 now. This is reports by council and staff. The first item under this section is a brief report on council member activities and brief announcements. I'll remind our council that this is basically anything that is not within your council committee formal assignments that you wanted to update the public on within about a minute or less. So I'll go on to the first hand raised. That is from Vice Mayor Chow. Welcome, Vice Mayor.
Actually, Mayor, I hope to get some updates from staff for questions from the community. One is both the property, where it's in the process right now. So I think Peggy's question was whether there is still time to review its approval or disapproval. And then another issue is with the Main Street Target Express being replaced by banquet hall. So what exactly is the status?
Well, let's go on that with the city manager update, which will be item number 5. So we'll take that under consideration for your request for updates. You do have about half a minute left, Vice Mayor Chow. Did you want to update on anything else in that time?
Yes. Okay. So one thing to report is last week the council gave direction for the staff to look into the possibility of moving the Apple Park parcel to CUSD. So we are looking forward to find out what's the process. And I also consulted an attorney who worked with CUSD before on the possibility of citizens initiative for a square footage based parcel tax. Which might only need a 50% vote rather than 2/3, as San Francisco has done for their school district. But then, unfortunately, I found out that as a school district.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. So we'll go on to the next hand raised on this. So just some brief reports. This will be Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, important topic for our community. I mean, we've heard so much in the way of emails and now tonight about the CUSD. I want to let the residents know that at the end of the meeting, when we get to ask for future items, I'll be asking for us to have a update on a study session for CUSD, so we have a better understanding and hopefully able to answer Vice Mayor's question. I'd also like to say I also feel we should know the true status of the Main Street retail requirement and where it's at, and then the Bath Brothers. These are important to our community. We should not be blindsided. Please have staff answer those questions formally so that we can see what those answers are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Next, we have Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. With regards to the Main Street issue, it should not have more than 40% of total retail square footage for restaurants. And any future refinements to the restaurant percentage may be approved by the Director of Community Development if a subsequent parking and traffic analysis indicates there is adequate parking for the various mixtures of uses and there are no additional and/or new significant traffic impacts compared to thresholds study in the original 2009 EIR and the 2012 addendum. So there are some rules around that which have to be followed. On October 27th, I served on the ACA 7 and 2021-0016 Initiative Subcommittee for Cal Cities. We have the task of making a recommendation to the Cal Cities Board regarding these two items, and I have been researching them, and tomorrow we have another meeting, so hopefully we'll finish up early tonight so I can get to my homework on that. I also looked into the CUSD and had some conversations with staff, which we can talk about at a later date. Thank you.
Great, great timing, Councilmember Moore. Thank you. And Councilmember Way.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So on October 21st, I think a lot of us attended the Public Safety Forum hosted by our Public Safety Commission. I hope that next year we have more attendees. It's really very great with a lot of sheriff and fire department and youth reports. And on the October 22nd, the Cupertino Historical Society Museum hosted soft opening of the exhibits from the Ohlone to Crosswords to Incorporation. When we have the real openings, I hope our residents would go and see it. It's really interesting history of our Cupertino city. And just one more thing. Okay, on October 29th, 11:30, former and current City Council women, we had our quarterly brunch at the High House hosted by Cupertino City Council women, and it was a Halloween fellowship. It was really great, fellowship with our fellow council women. So that's it.
Great, thanks so much, Councilmember Way. And so my remarks will be briefer, and possibly I can get this within a minute because you mentioned a couple of the items. So we have a lot of good diversity in Cupertino. The Turkish Republic Day celebration was held in Linda Vista Park this past Saturday, October 30th. So I was really pleased to be able to go there. We had a fire scar book signing. It's the name of a book written by Lily Lee regarding the fires that were set mysteriously and never solved in the various Chinatown encampments in the late 19th century. As I think a lot of people know, we were hosting Boris Stanley, one of the incorporators of the city of Cupertino, a couple of weeks ago, and we had a number of those items, including the Historical Society opening of the exhibit. As a quick follow-up to that, I actually got an email from a member of the community whose parents had taken a photo in 1948 of Cupertino that I think would be of really great interest to people. And he wanted to ask Boris whether he recognized where precisely on Highway 9 that was. And so I'll just go ahead and share that briefly. You'll notice that it says Cupertino, elevation 236 feet, and population 200. So that gives you a good sense of where we're at. A few short, years ago, so some 80 years ago, so we're 200. I think we hover around 60,000 now. So thanks very much. We are on to item number 4. That's our report on our committee assignments. These are our formal assignments divvied out at the beginning of the year, or really at the end of the calendar year, for representing Cupertino on various boards and agencies around the area. Anyone like to go first? This is a little bit more time, a couple minutes each. I see Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Way, followed by Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Moore.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So on October 25th, I served on the audit committee with the vice mayor. We received an internal audit update. Additionally, and of note, the language regarding the OPEB and pension trust investment policies was reviewed. I expressed my concern regarding ETFs and other investments and requested more information to qualify the policies and public interest. I chaired the environmental review committee meeting October 28th. This was a meeting which had been continued from August, which considered whether an MND was appropriate for 2 projects on Foothill. I brought up the issue of general plan compliance regarding the ground floor retail requirement for the Beta Brothers project at the Stevens Creek Boulevard and Foothill corner. and learned the HAA 30-day period for determining if a project application had been deemed complete by city staff had passed without council or ERC knowledge. In fact, I found out that I was a little more than a week late, but never knew it. This issue must be addressed in our general plan, or all of our neighborhood commercial centers are subject to having no retail, which is not to appear to be the intent of our general plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. Next, we have Councilmember Way.
Okay, so on October 27th, I attended the Valley Water Commission meeting because of the extreme drought. There's a lot of talk about water storage, flood prevention, nature preservation, and water conservation as a way of life. And that says even if we are not on the drought season, we need to customize our lifestyle to conserve water. So it's a very important issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Way. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow.
So, hi. So I was on the audit committee too, and we are going through the process that this time we got an update of policy, inventory, and plan. And every audit committee meeting, we will be going through the different part of the internal audits. And then on the 27th of October, I am the rep for our region on the Santa Clara County Recycling and Waste Reduction Committee. So this committee is working, receiving information from the Cal Recycle for, because January 1st, there will be new regulation on organic waste collection, and our businesses and the government agencies need to comply with a lot of new regulations, and they have simple ordinance and policies for the city staff to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Next, we have Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, no committee assignments this time. I'll just say though that Silicon Valley community is working on more power purchase agreements to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll keep you updated.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. So I have 3 items to report out on. So VTA, our board meeting is next, actually on Thursday in 2 days, but they do have a self-assessment that they take the board members through, I believe, on an annual basis. And so I'm happy to report out that that process continues. I know VTA board is subject to scrutiny and calls for restructuring, but they are on an ongoing basis looking to see what they can do to improve infrastructure and the other parts of the agency. So it was a half-hour assessment done by an independent, formerly elected mayor of, I believe it was Manhattan Beach. That was October 25th. On October 27th, as I mentioned previously, we had our West Valley Mayors and Managers meeting. Senator Cortese was there. As part of the unassigned committee tasks, we do have a subcommittee with regard to the city manager search right now. And so I had a task there that had to be done. And so I'll ask our interim city manager, Greg Larson, to speak to any items of note from our district attorney, Jeff Rosen, who was also there on our West Valley Mayors and Managers meeting that day. And the following day, on October 28th, the West Valley Mayors and Managers meeting was on October 27th. I'm not sure if I said that. We had a library JPA meeting, and we had the nominating committee meeting beforehand. The nominating committee, as with a lot of these various boards, makes recommendations as to who should be the chair and the vice chair. And similar to us, they do this on an annual basis. And so the nominating committee comprised of the current chair, the current vice chair, and myself, recommended that the current chair stay as the chair and the current vice chair stay as chair. So when we took it to the board meeting afterwards, it was confirmed that the chair, Supervisor Mike Wasserman, will remain the chair, and that the vice chair, Councilmember Lynette Lee of Los Altos, will remain the vice chair of the board that serves the county library system, of which Cupertino is a part. So other than that, county library system is doing great. Obviously, as the crown jewel of the system, and I say that without pride, I think it's just a fact. The Cupertino Library Branch is up in circulation. The services are right on the edge of what we can provide safely, and I believe that the evening hours, that they haven't been implemented yet, are just about to be implemented as well. So you'll be pleased to know that we'll be opening up until 9 p.m. If not already, then in the very soon future on some of these days. So that's my report out. The next item, as we had mentioned before, is Interim City Manager Larson's report. And this started as emergency updates, but this is really more of a general omnibus request. And so, Greg, I know we asked you to pack a lot into it on top of the other things. So, please feel free to perhaps use a little bit more time than your allocated 5 minutes here.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. First, some announcements from your city staff. First, from Parks and Recreation, the 2021 Artist Awards program from the Fine Arts Commission is now accepting applications. There's 3 categories for distinguished artists, emerging artists, and young artists. And I highlight this tonight because applications are due on November 17th. Councilmember Moore, we see your artwork behind you. But you probably can't apply, at least not as a sitting council member. We also want to announce from the Parks and Recreation Department that one of the work program items we'll be presenting tonight is also going online for public input. The Senior Resources Availability Survey is now available online at engagecupertino.org, and it is to identify the needs and wants and a level of awareness of current services and resources already provided in Cupertino for our senior population. And that survey will be open till December 3rd. So the Artist Awards, November 17th, senior survey through December 3rd. And with the welcome advent of rain in the last couple of weeks, it's a great opportunity to remind our public that unfilled sandbags are available throughout the county for any flooding protection you want to do on your own property. Here in Cupertino, they're available at the City Corporation Yard. We call it the City Service Center at 10555 Mary Avenue. And if you do have any flooding incidents on your street, you can call the City Service Center during the business hours or county communications at 408-299-2507, and they will deploy city staff as need be to address those issues. One of my other item from Public Works that came up about a month ago, staff reported to council that our crossing guard vendor that provides crossing guards at 16 locations was in the city of Cupertino, was unable to fill one of those locations, and they had somebody in the pipeline. That appointment did not work out, so we are still missing one crossing guard at Stevens Creek Elementary. Our vendor and other vendors throughout the Bay Area are facing this staffing challenge that's part of the retail direct services industry staffing challenge we've heard about in the mass media. Fortunately, our sheriff's office has agreed to provide an increased presence during pickup and drop-off hours at Stevens Creek Elementary, as other caseloads allow. Obviously, if there's a crisis they're responding to, they need to deal with that, but they will increase their presence until that position is staffed on an ongoing basis. In terms of our COVID situation, it is continuing to be relatively strong for Cupertino. We remain the jurisdiction with the average, the highest vaccination rate in the county per capita. The mask mandate is continuing, we believe, at least through November here in Santa Clara County, and it could go well into and through December based on current metrics. Today was a big piece of news for vaccines in that the FDA approved and CDD have both approved the Pfizer vaccine for children from age 5 to 11 years of age. So that opens up a new age range for vaccination. Testing continues here in the city of Cupertino at the Senior Center, offered by the county on the first and third Mondays of both November and December from 9:30 to 4:30. Yesterday, there were 292 tests given, and I was also pleased to report that 11 Citizen Corps volunteers from the city of Cupertino assisted the county in that effort. So that is our COVID update for tonight. In terms of a couple of the items from the public comment, first, Councilmember Moore already presented on the Bate brothers that went to ERC. That is a current application going through the process, not agendized for council discussion at this time, but it will potentially be coming to the council at some point. So council has already received information and will receive more. Main Street, however, since we had a number of speakers and council members on that, I wanted to provide a little additional information. First, as was mentioned previously, there is a 40% requirement in the original approval as the maximum per restaurant. That maximum has not yet been exceeded. However, we do not have an application in. Like many of the speakers mentioned, there is word afoot that an application is forthcoming. We expect something by the end of the month. It will require a traffic study, an impact study, as mentioned previously, for any request to have increased restaurant uses. However, this is a discretionary action by the city. There is no requirement that the city approve the request when it comes in. And beyond the traffic study, the city will consider other factors as well before making a recommendation for any action on that application. And we'll keep the council and public informed as we learn about that application coming forward. And in terms of our district attorney, Mr. Mayor, from the West Valley Mayors and Managers meeting, he was just letting us know about the good work being done to protect the residents. There were questions from multiple cities about the car break-ins and thefts of bikes and what are now called lower level crimes under the $1,000 metric, that $900 metric that receive less prosecutorial attention. And those were obviously shared as concerns from cities throughout the West Valley. That concludes staff report.
Thank you so much, Greg. Greatly appreciated. And so I'm going to go ahead and just back up one step. I wanted to credit Ed Von Runnen for providing the photo that's now in my background. His parents, Ed and Sally, took that in 1948. And when I get up, you'll be able to see the sign with the population elevation. So thanks very much. That was item number 5. We're on to the consent calendar. Would anyone from council like to move the consent calendar? That's items 6 through 10. And I see Councilmember Moore with a hand up. Would you like to move consent?
Yeah, so moved.
All right. Would anyone like to second? Councilmember Way?
Second.
Great. I don't see any other hands raised for discussion. And so, Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote for the motion on the table?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thanks very much. So let us go on to item number 11, which I believe is second reading of ordinances, but let me go ahead and confirm that. Yes, it is consideration of the second reading of ordinance number 21-2232 regarding amendments for environmental regulations related to various environmental protection requirements for construction, development, and other similar or related activities. And so let's go ahead and start with any potential updates from city staff. I have no reason to think that there are any. I see shakings of heads. And so, Madam City Clerk, do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this item? And I don't see anyone with their hands raised. I do see actually a hand raised now. So let's go ahead and go to Francis Hu. I will remind the members of the public that for any item, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And by the time the first person concludes speaking, you'll need to have your hand raised in order to be in the line to speak. And so, Francis, welcome. This is item number 11, the second reading of ordinances. Francis, did you want to speak on item number 11? Okay, I don't see you unmuting yourself, but we'll give you another moment.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, just to remind you, this is for second reading of ordinances, item number 11. Did you want to speak on item number 11 on our agenda?
I would like to speak about environmental impact of CUSD's school closure to our community.
Sorry, that's not going to get you in the door on item number 11. However, I have made a commitment. If we have time at the end of our meeting to reopen oral communications. And so thank you very much. I'll go ahead and bring this back to the council. And Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the second reading of ordinance number 21-2232?
This is the second reading and enactment of ordinance number 21-2232, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino, adding chapter 17.04, standard environmental protection requirements to the Cupertino Municipal Code.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so would anyone like to make a motion with regard to the second reading and enactment in an omnibus motion? Madam Council Member Moore?
Okay, just to clarify that the first part's already been taken care of. The part I move that ordinance number 21-2232 be read by title only, and that the city clerk's reading constitutes the second reading thereof. That seems like that's already been taken care of. So I move that ordinance number 21-2232 be enacted.
Okay, so the first part, you still have to move it, and the second part is the second part of an omnibus motion. So are you willing to move both of those items that you just read?
Correct. It's just a little confusing to have heard the reading already. It sounded like we already had done that, but thank you. Yeah, so that's how I started.
So just to clarify the procedural part of it, so the city clerk, whether it's first reading or second reading, makes the first reading first. And I apologize for not being consistent about that over the course of the year, but it's always the city clerk's role to put that reading on the table, and then you reference it in the motion, which is how our boilerplate motions are constructed.
Okay. So
okay.
just to say that the script that I have is I move that ordinance number 21-2232 be read by title only, and that the city clerk's reading constitute the second reading thereof. And I move that ordinance number 21-2232 be enacted. Is that how you want it?
That's perfect. Would anyone like to second Councilmember Moore's motion? Councilmember Willie, I actually saw your hand raised before I saw the electronic hand raised, Councilmember Way. And so Councilmember Willie, would you like to second? Okay, thank you, Councilmember Willie. And so Councilmember Way, I promise next time you're in a close race for a tie,
It's okay. I just didn't see any hands. I didn't see
Okay.
any hands. I didn't want to waste time, so.
Wonderful, thanks so much. Okay, so I don't see any further hands raised at this point. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call vote for this motion?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, excellent. So we are on to public hearings. We are on to item number 12 on our agenda. Item number 12 is regarding the future of our municipal water system, also known colloquially as the Monte Vista system. And it's a consideration of 1, key lease terms for a new long-term lease, 2, a first amendment of the current lease agreement with San Jose Water Company to extend the term up to 3 years, and 3, a request to increase the Public Works Administration's special projects budget allocation. And so forgive me, Mr. Interim City Manager Larson, I know you give me a cheat sheet of people to call upon. Did you want me to call upon Director Lee to give the presentation for this item? Okay, great. Greg, did you want me to call on you first to introduce this?
Yes, I'll actually lead off, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, members of the council and public. Before introducing Public Works Director Roger Lee for the substantive staff presentation, I just wanted to provide a few opening comments. It was at one of my first meetings with the City Council in July that staff brought forward consideration of the water lease for the city's municipal facilities that serve a third of the city. And the city's message to staff was quite clear: to have a very strong and competitive RFP process to get the best proposals possible to bring back for council consideration next spring. And the work we've done since that council meeting, it will be presented to you tonight by Director Lee, and I think it fulfills that direction in a number of ways. First, we have done outreach to both public and private water utilities to encourage interest in submitting proposals for the Cupertino system, and we are optimistic of having a competitive array of service providers. And the terms we're bringing you tonight for that lease is to maximize that competition. Second, per the council's direction in July, we have initiated a study of potential self-operation of that portion of the system, of the city's water supply system by the city, because we think there may be opportunities there, and it also increases competition in terms of the RFP process we're going forward, so that if the council does not accept any of the proposals that come in, you will have before you the option of city self-operation as well at that time. Third, we are bringing forward, and we didn't know this in July, but as we looked at the time frame for the RFP process and moving forward, we realized to create maximum competition in this RFP process, we had to lock down options for the council for the future. So your staff working with San Jose Water has proposed 3 tiers of potential lease extensions that are solely at the city's discretion to meet various competitive advantages should the council choose to go forward with that. So I'm pleased to say we're bringing you tonight a package that I think maximizes the potential of a truly competitive RFP process next spring when it comes back to you for the operation of the water facilities to the betterment of our public. Director Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Welcome.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Paul, council members. Thank you for the introduction. City Manager Greg Larson, Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. And I've been looking forward to presenting this item to the City Council this evening. Please expect this presentation to be about 10 minutes in length, plus the time necessary to respond to questions and receive input at the end of the presentation. The topic of this agenda item is consideration of key terms for a new long-term lease and a public hearing regarding the First Amendment of the current lease of the Cupertino Municipal Water System, San Jose Water Company. Next slide details the recommended actions for the agenda item. So the first is, as the mayor and Greg mentioned, your input on key lease terms for a new lease, to conduct a public hearing, to consider the First Amendment, and to adopt the resolution regarding the First Amendment. There is a fourth action, as mentioned by the mayor, that includes, included in the staff report. This recommended action is to approve budget modification, increasing appropriations in Public Works Administration special projects by $31,500 for the municipal water system. To begin this presentation and to provide some perspective of the water system serving Cupertino, the following slide shows the service area maps of the city. For your orientation, north is up on this slide. The area to the left in purple is the Cupertino Municipal Water System, which I will refer to as water system going forward. It's owned by the city of Cupertino, and this is what is leased currently to the San Jose Water Company. On top and in the green area is the water system owned and operated by California Water Service Company. And the lower orange area is the system owned and operated by San Jose Water Company. As the lessee of the water system shown in purple, San Jose Water Company is responsible for all operations, including repair, maintenance, operation, customer service, billing, emergency service, and water quality testing. The City Council provided direction regarding the future operation of the system as recently as last July, as Greg mentioned. The agenda for that meeting was the consideration of the lease, sale, or city operation of the water system and provide direction on these options. And the reason this item was being considered at that time was due to the current lease between the city and San Jose Water Company that began in 1997 and will expire in September of next year. Upon thoughtful deliberation and input from the meeting attendees, City Council provided direction to continue with the process to develop a request for proposal with an initial term of up to 12 years and an option for a renewal term that could extend the total lease period to 20 years. Additionally, City Council directed staff to analyze the feasibility of in-house operation and what impact, if any, in-house operation would affect future water rates. For perspective of where staff is on this process of the request for proposals, this next slide provides a time frame of where we are. Now, and for context, and as mentioned prior, the current 25-year lease began in '97, and in December of 2019, the current lease was amended. It's the second row, and through this amendment, required San Jose Water Company to limit water rates at an amount that is not greater than those charged to customers of the system they own in Cupertino, and further required them to complete $5 million of capital improvements prior to the lease ending this next September. After this evening, which is the row shown there in blue, you can see the anticipated schedule for the request for proposal to be issued is later this month, and that requests for proposals are expected back from proposers as early as January. And then a February 22, a public hearing date is to consider options has been tentatively scheduled. And then to facilitate the schedule, City Council input on key lease terms for a new long-term lease is now needed. Now, this slide shows an overview of the key terms for your input, and a listing of these items and details are included in the staff report as in attachment D. And then the next 5 slides of my presentation are to cover each of these terms in more detail. This first slide is the proposed length of the new term, and consistent with the direction that we received from Council last July, staff will include in the request for proposal a 12-year term with a renewal option not to exceed 20 years total. Additionally, and as an alternate term, staff is considering a 20-year term without the option to renew. And by having this option, staff will be able to evaluate any advantages of starting with a longer term lease. This slide discusses the proposed capital improvements to the water system and how these improvements are proposed to be paid for by the city receiving a one-time concession fee from the successful operator. In the current lease, a one-time concession fee was required, as well as the requirement to receive an annual rent. This combination is proposed again for the new long-term lease, with the added requirement that the one-time concession fee from the successful system operator be used only for capital improvements to the water system. For annual rent to be received, the same is proposed regarding dollars staying in the water system for needed capital improvements. However, if the annual rent amount provided by the successful operator exceeds the amount recommended by the 2019 Asset Management Plan, which is currently recommending improvements of $1.5 million annually, then excess rent dollars received could then be used outside the water system and at the discretion of City Council. Additionally, because of inflation, the successful operator will be required to apply a cost escalator to the annual rent. This slide is how operations are being proposed. The key terms shown on this slide are like the current lease agreement. However, it is planned to separate out maintenance work from repair work. Maintenance work such as that required for valves, hydrants, or meters will be the sole responsibility and to be provided at no cost to the city by the operator. Operations, customer service, and water quality would be in the same category. In contrast, repair work is different than scheduled maintenance work and includes activities that are not scheduled, such as emergency repairs. Emergencies repair includes such items as water main breaks or even damages caused by earthquakes. The cost to perform this work will also be the sole responsibility of the operator and provided to the city at no cost. For item number 4 on the slide, other operational terms are also being developed with the assistance of our consultant for the benchmarking of standards for required system maintenance. Examples include requirements of when mainline water valves would be exercised or the frequency of when storage tanks are to be repainted. Now, this slide is on how the setting of rates are being proposed. Like the current lease that was amended in 2019, it is proposed that water rates for a new long-term lease be capped at the lowest California Public Utility Commission CPUC approved rates for other water customers within Cupertino. This proposal will ensure that the water rates imposed by an operator remain just, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. All water rate charge revenues will continue to go to the operator of the water system. And as this has already been applied to customers of the water system, we know that when this cap is placed, it results in the customers paying slightly less due to the CPUC regulation fee not being applicable. As a result, customers of the water system are currently paying 1.43% less than their neighbors connected to a different system. Now, the last way that the city has proposed to receive dollars is through the continued charging of the franchise fee. The current lease requires the water system operator to pay annually 2% of gross revenues as a franchise fee. And this is codified in our municipal code for both California Water Service Company and San Jose Water Company. However, since it is not known who may operate the water system in the future, it is proposed that the operator pay the same annual fee to the city. Receipt of this fee will be used to offset the staffing costs necessary to manage the new long-term lease. All right, so this is the summary of the key terms being proposed for the new long-term agreement. And in the next slide, the terms of the first agreement, first amendment of the current lease and why it is being recommended are discussed. On the beginning of the presentation, we outlined that the request for proposals will occur next month, and the council consideration of this option is tentative for next February. In the direction received last July from council, staff was directed to conduct an analysis of the in-house operations, and this analysis is ongoing and will be completed by early next year. In parallel to that work, staff is discussing the potential interest and complementary benefits of a memorandum of understanding with either the city of Santa Clara or more likely the city of Sunnyvale, as we have adjacency to their system. As all this information comes together, the proposals from water operators, the analysis of city operation, and what synergy the city could benefit with an adjacent agency, staff will be able to evaluate all options together and provide a recommendation to council to consider, as has been stated in February. Now, this is an aggressive schedule that we are trying to hold. Authorization of the First Amendment will provide the city flexibility at its sole discretion, as Greg mentioned. If the city receives good proposals and all is in order, no time extension would occur. If proposals need to be redone, then there's the option to extend 6 months to go back out to RFP. And if it were decided to staff up for city operation or other alternatives, the city will have the discretion to extend 2 or as much as 3 years. And if in the event there is an extension, the First Amendment does require San Jose Water Company to make capital improvements to our system. These are in the amounts of $350,000 for a 6-year extension, $1.6 million for a 2-year extension, and $2.5 million for a 3-year extension. On this slide, the outreach that has occurred for this item is listed. Public notice was published in the Courier last month, and a webpage was created that contains many of the attachments that are included in the staff report, plus an FAQ page. Additionally, a news article was published on the city's main webpage. So if the schedule holds as anticipated for the upcoming RFP, City Council will in February consider the future operation of the water system, including the potential to operate the system with city staff. Accordingly, making those decisions are not the actions to consider for this evening. In the staff report, there are 4 distinct action items. The first is yours and the community's input on the key lease terms for the new long-term lease. And the actions noted are on this slide, as previously mentioned. Oh, and I'll go back one. Apologies. Now there is and lastly, there is the fourth action to approve the budget modification of $31,500.
Great, thank you very much.
I wanted to mention, Mayor, that we do have in attendance Claire Gibson and Alexander Barnhill. They're consulting attorneys with Jarvis Fay and Gibson. They're attending and also available for questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Thank you for being here as well, Claire and Alexandra. Let's go ahead and bring this over to members of the public before we bring it to council. We'll go ahead and take that input first before we bring it for questions and comments before we entertain a motion. I see one hand from the public raised. That is Rhoda Fry. I'll remind everyone that you'll need to have your hand raised before Rhoda is done speaking in order to be in line to speak on this item number 12. And so Rhoda, welcome, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Lee. San Jose Water is a for-profit company, and it seems to me that there are a couple of gaps in the contract that I think could be filled. Perhaps the city attorney can weigh in. First, there don't seem to be any alarms if there's a sudden waste of water by a San Jose Water Company customer. For instance, as you know, I'm very familiar with what's going on with the quarry, so here we go. Lehigh had a water issue where some device didn't shut off, so they wound up spilling 2.5 million gallons of water into the Permanent Day Creek watershed over a period of 5 days. And San Jose Water evidently would have known that this happened, however, raised no alarms. it would happen to have been discovered by somebody downstream. So with all the technology that we have, I would think that something could happen if there was a major spill. And the only thing that did happen is that Lehigh had to pay a bigger water bill. And oh, by the way, they get a really big discount because they're a big customer. So they don't pay as much water per gallon than I do, which doesn't seem very fair. The other thing in the contract is it talks about water going for Cupertino customers. Now, keep in mind that Stevens Creek Quarry, for instance, is not a customer of San Jose Water. The water pipes don't go out that far out to the reservoir. People typically have their well water. Unfortunately, some well water is running out, and Stevens Creek Quarry is now purchasing water from a hydrant within the San Jose Water district. So technically that's our water. And I wonder about how that counts against us in terms of water usage, what the consequences would be. Should the city of Cupertino be compensated more for when somebody outside of Cupertino's service area uses water that should have been allocated to us? So that's my comment for this evening, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. I don't see any other hands raised from the public, and so we'll bring this back to council for any follow-up questions. We're doing quite well on time, and so I will go ahead and keep track just to let people know and to have a fair allocation. First, we have Councilmember Willie, followed by Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, more or less pertaining to Rhoda, our residents' question, is I'd sure like to allocate a little of my time to Roger to help clarify if in fact the Cupertino water is being used by a non-Cupertino entity. If Roger can answer that, and then I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Yeah, the short answer is yes. The city is aware that Stevens Creek Quarry is pulling water out of a fire hydrant with a hydrant meter that has been issued by San Jose Water Company, as is practice to a variety of contractors who would have similar hydrant meters. They're using it for the purpose for dust abatement. This would be prior to the rain to meet their air quality requirements. San Jose Water Company is required to provide waters to the service area customers, which they are, and I'm not aware of any impact of that use from Stevens Creek Quarry causing any of our customers not to be served or at the quantities that they desire.
So the follow-up question, you actually kind of touched on it. The emails that we got from another resident who was concerned that, potable water is being used for street cleaning and activities like that, that I would have thought should be coming from reclaimed water on the purple pipes. Is that the case, that good water is being used in street sweepers versus reclaimed water?
Yes, that is the case. I mean, we are using potable water, but the reclaimed water has a high chloramine residual that you don't want that into the storm drain system. There is a much smaller residual in potable water. So, I mean, the water is used very judiciously, but I'm not aware that recycled water, that you would want to use that for street sweeping dust control.
So then maybe the last question would be, if we're getting a franchise fee off 2% off of their gross, and yet they're kind of subsidizing these large users, Stevens Creek Quarry and Lehigh, isn't that a direct loss to us if we're getting 2% of the gross, but the gross is kind of under accounted for these large uses? And can we fix it?
Well, it is a metered use, so there is revenues. I mean, they do have to pay for the water.
But shouldn't they have to pay the same rate, as Rhoda said? Shouldn't they have to pay the same rate that we pay for water that they're using in such a mundane way, wasteful type of way?
I'm not familiar with the rate differences for that use versus, say, a residential use. I will point out that in the key terms in the attachment D that we are thinking that having the city specifically authorize the use of water outside our service area it is desirable. And so that is a condition that we are going to have in the new lease.
Thank you for mentioning that, Roger. I did want to highlight it. The current lease with San Jose Water doesn't require city approval. In the key lease terms that are being presented to you tonight, the city would have an approval requirement for non-Cupertino customer use of Cupertino water.
All right, thank you, Director Lee, as well as Greg. And John, you're right around 4 minutes, and so I stopped the clock. Did you want to continue at this point, or should I go on to Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Moore?
No, I'm finished for now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay, so following up on Councilmember Wiley's questions, so could you confirm whether Lehigh is paying, gets a discount, or companies like industrial use do get a discount rate compared with other retail customers? And how much of a discount?
I don't know that information offhand. I can look up the San Jose rates to see what that is. I'm not aware that there is a discount. I know that the service charge, the meter sizes are quite expensive for those larger water services. But I can definitely follow up and get that information.
So we own the water system. Does the Lehigh rely on our water system to deliver those water? They are using our pipes.
I need to confirm the size of meter that Lehigh even has. They're outside of our city limits, so I would need to investigate what Lehigh's connection is.
Or do they get their water from elsewhere? Yeah, please give an update. And also, the question of some of our residences still use well water because the current water pipe doesn't go far enough, and the well waters are draining up. And now their concern is Lehigh is buying up water that could have been used by residences. So is that a valid concern, that they are actually buying up water that should have been used for residential? Or could you confirm what kind of water they are buying up?
This is Lehigh you're asking?
Yeah, Rhoda mentioned that Lehigh is buying up water to supplement what they are using.
I would have to get that information from San Jose Water to know, what source of water that Lehigh is using, and if there's internal source, but I can follow up with that.
Okay. And then you said that reclaimed water is not desirable for stormwater system, but then aren't we just all going to use purple pipe, and so if their chlorine level is high and not desirable, how come the whole state is moving that direction?
Well, that's for the efficient use of watering of landscape and turf, which is to have no runoff into the storm water system, and that's a great use for recycled water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then what decisions you need from us today? I think the staff report mentioned the key terms in the agreement.
Yeah, just to make sure that we heard the direction from July regarding the term, some of those key points with operations, maintenance, repair. That's just outlined, our planned drafting of the lease, just so that we can get your input prior to it going out later on this month.
Attachment D has a table of key lease terms. So it's this table that you would like our comment on?
Yeah, if there's anything contrary to what's been articulated in my presentation or that's in the draft lease terms, it would be timely to do so before we get the lease out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Next, we have Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, you're right at about 4 minutes as well.
Okay, I just have a quick question regarding a member of the public's emails that we've received regarding the water system, and I didn't see them in the written communications. They didn't necessarily place the agenda item on their emails, but they've been writing on this topic, and so I'm wondering if that is something that we should be having gathered together and placed in the written communications for this item or not. I don't know what you do in this instance.
I would recommend that we review this. It's been a lot of emails over many months. I would suggest we go back for the relative scoping of this item coming to council and look at the emails that have been submitted and relevance of those emails for the discussion before the council. And yes, we could certainly add those to the record.
Councilmember Moore, did you have anything else?
No, that's it at this time.
Okay, great. Next, we have Councilmember Willie, and Councilmember Moore, you're at about a minute at this point. Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing in the presentation is that Public Works is exploring the option that maybe at some point in the future, it might be worthwhile for the city to run the water system. Am I correct there?
That analysis is ongoing, and
great. And
yes.
And what do you think you'll be actually giving us the package numbers when you come back at a future point? I mean, I think it would be good for us to have an idea. It's going to take this many people. It's going to cost us this much to set it up, and this would be the ongoing revenue from it.
Oh, absolutely.
If I could maybe address this one, Roger.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jump in. We do see this as a key piece of making this a competitive process. Yeah. So we do want to time our analysis coming to council in a way that gives the council full discretion for making whatever decision the council determines is best for the city, but doesn't in any way upend the RFP process so that we're getting the best proposals possible. So right now we're looking at a timing where the proposals will come in, we'll then present the analysis to the council of self-operation, why we're doing the evaluation of the proposals, and then the proposals will come to council for your consideration. However, I won't be here then, so that's the timeline we're putting into the RFP.
So just kind of as a final question, if we were in fact running the system, would we be able to, we can't not serve customers like Stevens Creek Quarry and Lehigh, but would we be able to be more equitable with the charging rates? Yes, they're large, but are they more important than residents in terms of how much they pay for their water needs? And so I'm concerned. So what would we be able to do?
Well, if the analysis came back, Councilmember Willie, that it was most efficient for the city to operate the system, then we would be regulating our own rates per Proposition 218, and it would be reflective of our cost to operate the system. So we would set the rates for all the different categories of customers based on the actual cost to provide that service.
Well, if we were able to do that, can we not ask San Jose Water to be more equitable as opposed to giving them large discounts, especially if the water usage is going for dust abatement? I mean, that seems like that should be the most expensive.
Well, let me get back to confirm where the equity issue is, and I will follow up on that.
Great, thank you.
We're not sure we are doing large discounts. I just want to clarify that. That was a postulate from public comment. Your staff cannot verify that. So I just don't want it left on the record that we are in any way giving large discounts, or San Jose Water is giving large discounts to any class of customers. We don't know if that's the truth or not.
Right, and just let me also clarify that under the current lease, the city does not set the rates. They're set independently from the city.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Willie. You're right at 5 minutes. And so we'll go back to Councilmember Way. I don't think you've spoken yet, right, Councilmember Way? All right, Councilmember Way. And you'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. We have read a package that the staff reported, and also from our attorney's assessments. My question is, it looks like that actually to run this pipeline by ourselves has a lot of challenges. We have to hire staff, hire equipment. We cannot set the rate. Its rate is set by the state. So my question is, how much staff time and maybe outside consultant we need to do this analysis, which from what I read so far, it doesn't look like the city would be profitable or even be able to provide better rates or limit what industry can use on this issue. So my question is, if it is very obvious that to operate this ourselves could not be beneficial to either the city or the residents, shall we spend time, resources, and perhaps outside consulting money to even do this research? I mean, we have lots of other things to do. So I just want to question, maybe city attorney can answer some questions. Is this a profitable thing to do for the city?
So I'll have to defer to others as to whether it's a profitable thing to do. I think there is some incremental cost at looking at the additional options. I'm not aware that those have been broken out. Roger might be. There are, additional costs that would be incurred both upfront and ongoing to operate it. I would say that just building on what Greg said earlier, it's really premature to estimate what those costs are because we are still in the process of doing that analysis.
If I might just add, through the course of the council's July 20th discussion, I committed to initiate the study per council discussion of a self-operated water system to integrate. So we're fulfilling that prior council discussion. We have already engaged the consultant to do the work. So that's kind of a fixed cost in terms of this process. And it's looking at the issues that Councilmember Way brought up. What are the capital costs? What are the staffing costs? What are the operating costs? What are the likely revenues that would accrue to the city for self-operating? How would that compare with other municipally operated systems? And in trying to do all that benchmarking to see if it makes sense for us to do it. I think some of the bigger issues may not be financial. It may be the whole rate setting process. And the one clarification I wanted to offer, going back to what Director Lease said, it's not that the California PUC would set our rates. It's that the city would have to go through a Prop 218 rate setting process where you would be setting the rates for 1/3 of the residents of Cupertino, while the other 2/3 would be set by the water companies going through the PUC. And so that would create a differential between 1/3 of your population and 2/3 of your population. That may be a more challenging issue that the council will have to consider next February and March. We're not prejudging that outcome from the council. We're really just using our consultant to do the financial analysis so that we're giving the council the best options available to have the most competitive RFP process possible.
And I would add that in-house operation may turn out to be quite competitive, and it may show that there's an advantage to it over the the RFP and the outside operators. And so they're going to have to bring us some very competitive proposals because they really do need to be concerned that we can do this better than them.
Okay, thank you.
We just don't know that yet.
All right, thanks for the comments.
Thanks, Councilmember Way. You're right at under 5 minutes at this point. So I'll go back to Vice Mayor Chow. Vice Mayor Chow, as I stated, you were right around 4 minutes. And if you have follow-ups at this point, I did want to ask a few questions myself as well, but please go ahead at this point.
Okay, thank you. So I want to clarify, I think we started this process of exploring other options. It was with an intention to possibly look at whether other options might give our residents a cheaper water rate, because right now, since we have contracted only with San Jose Water, we are kind of had only one option. So I think even though, it does cost money to engage the consultant, but we are doing our due diligence to make sure that, okay, for the next 10, 20 years, even if we stay with San Jose Water, we would know that we've explored the options that's still the best economical way for our residents and the city. So I think that's what this exercise is. My question is for the amendment. There is no red line version. I just want to be sure. So the difference of the amendment versus the original, is that captured in the key lease term table?
No, I mean the first amendment is not a restated or amended lease. It's just a first amendment, so it stands on its own with the current lease agreement.
Oh, okay.
And all it's changing is at the city's sole discretion is the term, and then those capital improvement amounts that are required.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. So you're at your 5 minutes, and let me go ahead and start my clock here. I want to focus this on the extended lease that's being proposed here. So let me see if I have this correct. The default resolution that staff is recommending has a 3-year lease extension. Is that correct? So basically, if we pass the resolution as it's written, it's a 3-year extension to San Jose Water Company. Is that right?
Mayor, it's only up to and if the city authorizes an extension at all, and then that would be the maximum extension duration.
Okay, but as I'm reading this as it's written in the draft resolution, it looks like what we're being asked to do is, well, we're being presented a palette of options. Apparently 6 months if we need more time to find a new lessee, 2 years if we end up taking this in-house and operating the water system on our own, and then 3 years if we end up selling, the pipes altogether. So if the motion were, just to be really clear about it, if the motion were simply to say, I move that I'm not making the motion, but I'm just, going by way of example. If I were to say, I move that we pass staff's recommendation, how long would that lease extension be?
And I see that Claire Gibson, her screen's on. May I let Claire, you answer.
Okay,
I
great. Thanks, Roger. Yeah, so am I right, Claire? You'll have to unmute your mic too. So would it be 3 years if we just move what the staff recommendation is here?
No, that by approving the resolution and the attached First Amendment, what that affords you is the option to activate one or none of those extensions. So simply approving this does not extend the lease at all. However, it affords you the option to say, gee, we need an extra 6 months. And that sets up a mechanism so you can do that automatically. If you need 2 years, it sets up a mechanism for that. But if you don't take that affirmative action to request the extension, the lease will expire as currently scheduled on September 30th of 2022.
Okay, great. And when will we need to invoke those extensions? Well, let me back up. Are those extensions 6 months, 2 years, and 3 years, or are they 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years? Or are they year by year or something else?
The three options are 6 months, 2 years, and 3 years, and they are at the city's discretion. They're optional. Although the description in your staff report and also in the recitals for the First Amendment give rationales that tether each of those time increments to particular actions. The draft, the First Amendment itself is more nuanced and gives you discretion. So you can activate the 6 months regardless of what the reason is.
Yeah, when? How much notice do we need to provide to the lessee that we're going to be activating any given term?
Yeah,
30 days.
Thank you.
Okay, so if it ends on September 30th of next year, we would need to let them know by August 31st. Is the lessee amenable to this First Amendment? Has anyone talked to them? Okay, so Greg's nodding his head, good. Okay, we would need to let them know by August 31st whether we're invoking an extension. And if we invoke 6 months, can we invoke 2 years later? Or do we basically just have one opportunity to have an extension that goes either six months or 2 years or 3 years?
That's an interesting question. It was structured to choose from one of those three options, but I think it could be read to extend beyond that, but that's a good question.
Yeah, no, I ask good questions. Thank you. So let me ask you this.
And Mr. Mayor,
yeah, please.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, I think part of why we're bringing this to you now is we realized if we waited till after the RFP process to then try to obtain a 6 month, 2 year, or 3 year extension, if that's what the council wanted it, the city wouldn't be in a competitive position to do so.
Yeah, look, I'm going to take my mayoral discretion and give myself an extra 3 minutes. I'm at 5 minutes. There's a purpose for this, and I want to kind of get this out into the open here. So, with regard to being able to invoke these extensions, if we're at a point 6 months in or 5 months into a 6 month extension, if we don't have an option of extending it further out, then my concern is that we're limiting some of our options. And so I wonder whether we would be able to take a look at this and provide 6 month increments, or if we're at 6 months with 30 days notice to extend it out to 2 years. And by the same token, if we're at the 2 years with a 30-day notice, extend it out to 3 years. So that's my question with regard to how this lease is functioning. But I realize that given these three different options, okay, 6 months represents if we need more time to lease it out to a new lease through a bidding process. 2 years represents if we are trying to take this in-house, and 3 years represents if we're trying to sell off the pipes altogether. So I think if we're trying to go ahead and look for an extension, right, and we're 6 months in into a new term, so 6 months out from September 2022, is something like March or so of 2023. And if we're into 2023 and we needed that extra 6 months to start a new lease, I don't think we're necessarily going to be, like switching horses, so to speak, in the middle of the river and then trying to, bring it in-house. But I would like to have a situation where we have not just the options to, open up to the city when we need them, but also sufficient amounts of time to investigate, particularly what the cost benefit would be of potentially bringing the pipes in-house. I know we've been kind of dancing around this, but no one has actually done a cost benefit analysis. And I appreciate Director Lee for pointing out the fact that, well, yes, actually it could be beneficial. And I will also point out from the perspective of a policymaker that, it's precisely this exercise that we want to undertake, right? I mean, we have 3 different services, 3 different classifications of water supply in Cupertino. While one could say this represents lack of parity and, like a different rate structure, one could also say from a policy-oriented perspective that this represents competition. And I would say one should say that. One should absolutely say that because that's the opportunity that this represents. And so we can point to Santa Clara. And I know you can ask people in Santa Clara internally, and they will give you the comment that it's a mixed bag. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, if you have the wherewithal to, control your own utility within a jurisdiction, I think that makes you a stronger jurisdiction personally. I'd like to keep the option open. I want to investigate out the possibility of bringing the pipes in-house. I think we have to do it. I think we have to do it from a policy perspective to do the responsible thing as an agency, as a government entity. And so, I don't know if that means that we need to be able to invoke an additional 6 months after that initial 6 months is invoked. But at this point, let me ask this final question. Does either staff or one of our, outside attorneys from Jarvis Fay believe that we are at a critical time point right now where we have to make a decision as to the lease extension? And I say this, by way of thanking Greg, our interim city manager, for bringing this forward to us before he begs off from Cupertino. It's been a great 4 or 5 months so far, but like you say, you turn into a pumpkin at the stroke of midnight sometime in early December. So, thank you for bringing this forward. But I will point out the obvious, if we have a new city manager, in the near term, wouldn't it kind of make sense to get a sense of where the wherewithal and capabilities are for, the person managing our city staff at that point? So that's a question. I mean, could we revisit this potentially in January or even February with regard to the lease extension? Are we at a critical time point right now? Do we have to make a decision as to whether we do 6 months, 2 years, or 3 years, and be able to give that notice by like August 31st of 2022, or can we put off this decision for a couple of months here?
If I may offer a first response, Mayor, yeah. We think you're on a critical path if you want to have any chance of RFP completion by September 30th. So if we follow the current lease expiring and to have either San Jose Water or a new service provider able to provide services to a third of the city as of the termination of the existing lease, it's critical that the RFP go out within a month or two. However, no decision will be required on 6 month, 2 year, or 3 year until the council has received the full cost benefit analysis of doing it in-house, as well as the proposals from, we believe, at least 3 outside parties who will want to propose on operating our system. So I would argue, going forward now, the council will have the information by April to make a choice of at least one of 4 service providers.
Okay, I'm at the end of my additional 3 minutes. Let me, sorry to cut you off, Greg. Can I have some time from somebody else? Is everyone, okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore.
Well, I do have one point of clarification for you, Mayor Paul, and that is, do you have some input for the key lease terms beyond, are you making a request for something beyond the 6-month, 2-year, and 3-year item? And I do really appreciate the concerted effort to provide a lot of flexibility for us here. I think that that's really helpful, and you staff heard all of our comments, so I do genuinely appreciate that. But
I definitely appreciate that. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I'm starting your time, but appreciate being able to use some of your additional 3. To answer your question, I don't have comments on the key lease terms going forward for the long-term lease. For this, I see 2 things as critical. We need to be able to push a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, if we don't have a cost-benefit analysis, then we really don't have the basis to make a decision as to whether we would want to bring the pipes in-house. But I suspect if we're the rate setter, okay, and we can and we have the ability to run a utility in-house, then I think the math should work out so that we could be competitive at least. But in terms of trying to preserve our options, I think our options are really a matter of pushing for the evaluation. So I'm wondering how long that will take, and whether staff has started on that down that path, or whether we need to. Okay, so Greg, you're nodding your head. That's great.
Yeah, we've already started the analysis. We're timing it to come to council right after the RFP deadline. We don't want to release our analysis before the RFP deadline, because then the private parties bidding on our system may use that as the benchmarks to beat. So we want to retain the council flexibility and discretion. So we're timing that benefit analysis to come to council before you have to make a decision on a private service provider.
Okay, so sometime shortly after February, but I would imagine well before August of next year.
March, April, yeah.
March, April, okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Councilmember Moore. You still have about a minute of your remaining, additional 3 minutes. I see no other hands raised at this point. Did anyone else want to? Okay, I have a final question, if it's okay to utilize. Okay, great. Is the lease extension costing us anything? Do we pay anything up front? Or do we simply have an option that's held in place until August 31st to invoke one of these 6-month, 2-year, or 3-year lease extension terms?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. It is at no charge to the city.
Okay. Would San Jose Water have any rights to unilaterally invoke any kind of an extension, or require us to have any kind of capital expenditures or the like?
No, it's one-sided to the favor of the city. It does require them to expend specific dollars for various extension terms, but the flow only works from them to us.
Okay, so then basically under as it's written, we would need to make a decision by August 31st whether we want a 6-month, a 2-year, or a 3-year extension. Is that correct? I see a nod from our esteemed outside counsel. Is that's an affirmative, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, great.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. Those are all my questions. Council Member Moore, you have your hand raised. And sorry, as I exhausted all your time, if other council member would be willing to.
Well, I just want to understand, when I first read the 6-month extension, I thought it was only $350,000 and then 1.6 million for the 2-year and then $2.5 million for the 3-year. What I don't understand is when I'm looking at the actual agreement, it looks like it's saying 5.35 million for a total expenditure of 5.35 million for the 6-month, and then 6.6 for the 2-year, and 7.5 for the 3-year. Could someone explain where all that extra funding, how that happened?
I'd be happy to, because this is an amendment to the current agreement that requires $5 million of capital expenditures by the end of the current lease term of September. All those numbers represent Councilmember Moore as the $5 million plus the $350,000. That's the 5.35 for 6 months. 5 million plus the 1.6 million, which is the 2-year extension amount. That's the 6.6. and the 2.5 plus the 5. That's the 7.5. So it's just a continuation of the current agreement.
Okay, thank you, Roger, but I thought they already did spend the 5 million. Is that not true?
The city has received the funds, and they're actively working on, say, 2 projects right now. And so it is anticipated that will be complete by September of next year. But in any event, the city holds those funds.
Okay, and I thought it was interesting that you went 350 and instead of going 700,000 for a full year, and then it would be 1.4 million. You managed to the 1.6. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, without any further hands raised, I'll go ahead and move the staff recommendation. I mean, unless staff can tell us at this point that they can keep some options open for us. Specifically, I would wonder whether we could change the extension ability for us to say at the end of the 6-month term, we might be able to invoke a 2 or 3 year total extension, which is to say, okay, so September, October, November. So by the end of March, I think it is, that would be the 6-month extension. We would give 30 days notice by, say, the end of February to be able to tell San Jose Water we would want to invoke 2 or 3 years. Do you think that would take a significant amount of changing to the agreement or clarifying, negotiating with the lessee at this point? I mean, that would be
require negotiating.
Yeah.
It would be a negotiation. I will tell you, we had multiple rounds to get to the proposal that's before you. It was not easy negotiations, but I do think we have a cooperative relationship with our current service provider. And so we could certainly raise that issue. I also wonder, and Claire, this might be something for you, a side letter agreement, maybe just for a 6-month extension, and that becomes another, I'm just toying with throwing open this entire agreement rather than having another amendment.
Yeah, I don't see any really viable option, just speaking off the cuff here, other than really redoing this so it's structured for being sequential instead of just picking one of the 3 options and implementing it.
Okay.
See, I'm just trying to think about what might change if we invoke a 6-month option in that time, because I guess the assumption is that we would possibly need that extra time to transition to a new lease. I mean, this is kind of like a really nice padded contingency, right? I mean, do we really need it? It would be safe to have it, but I guess that's fine. I mean, it doesn't sound like we would be able to sell off the pipes or take over the pipes within a 6-month period, so that doesn't really help us in that situation.
Correct.
I guess we would need to basically just renegotiate a new lease altogether. Sequential is a good word to describe it. I think I would have preferred to have at the end of the 6-month period the ability to invoke a 2 or 3 year total, extension. But that not being the case at this point, if we really feel, if we're being advised by our staff and outside counsel that we are at a bit of a time critical point, I'm willing to go forward, to move the staff recommendation. I will note that we are not obligated to invoke any of these terms. 6-month is really just kind of a comfort in case we get a new lessee or a new contract through this RFP process. And it's really the 2 years and the 3 years that are kind of the key elements here. Although, and I won't push back on whether, the entirety of the time really is needed. I mean, perhaps it is, but, I do wonder what happens to the rates within that interim period of 24 months or 36 months. But in any event, Councilmember Moore, you still have your hand raised. Well, let me bring forward the motion because I'm not seeing any feedback from staff at this point. I'll just move the staff recommendation at this time. Would anyone like to second that for purposes of discussion? Councilmember Moore, please just make an affirmative statement. So,
second.
Okay, great. All right. So, for purposes of discussion, would anyone like to, have have any follow-ups here? It doesn't look like there are follow-ups. Well, thank you very much. I think this has been chock full of great information, and hopefully, Mr. Larson, you're not committing your successor to anything that's too much of a mad scramble to get us an excellent cost benefits analysis and make Cupertino the paradigm of how to run your own excellent utilities like we do everything else, not to pat ourselves on the back or anything. But we sure deserve it. Okay, so thank you very much again. Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're about 2 hours into our meeting at this point. I'd like to have us take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 9 o'clock. And we only have, I believe, one more item, item number 13 on our enumerated agenda. When we come back, we will pick that item up. And just for the benefit of the public, if you're watching along, hold on, let me give you a sign. I was trying to give you a signpost. Oh, that's a city work program, Q1 update. All right, we'll see you at 9 o'clock. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Larson, would you like to proceed with our city work program update Q1 of fiscal year 2021 to 2022?
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is our quarterly update on the work program that the City Council adopted last May. And unfortunately, I just lost my copy of the slide I'm sharing. There it is. So here's the presentation outline, and I will try to go through this quickly, Mr. Mayor. I'm not walking through every single project given the hour, but we also know that the council will have plenty of questions at the end, and all of your department directors are here with us this evening to answer questions you may have on any of the specific projects. We'll start off with this real quick background information. We want to cover the 3 items left over from last fiscal year, which are an attachment B. We then want to focus primarily on this year's work program items to give you the first quarter update of what we've done in the first 3 months of the fiscal year, and then to give you a preview of what's coming in the next 3 months that we'll be reporting to you on in late January, or more likely at your first meeting in February. And then there are a few outstanding challenges I wanted to discuss with the council. So that's the presentation outline. Moving ahead, the background information is, as we'll discuss at the end of my presentation, most city resources, roughly 80 to 85%, are devoted to day-to-day services, which makes it all the more important for the council to do, as this city has a very good policy and practice where the council establishes clear-cut priorities in numerical order that helps us drive ahead what's most important for the direction of the council for new initiatives, projects, and changes that the council would like to see on behalf of the community. This work program that we're in the first quarter of was adopted in May. It includes 34 items that were adopted by council, of which 30 are in priority order. Having helped many cities throughout California and city councils adopt priorities, 30 is an ambitious list, but that you put them in priority order makes it easier because we're trying to focus on the highest priorities first. As per the council's request and has been done previously, we are providing quarterly updates, which the public can obtain on the dashboard at cupertino.org City Work Program. And then we provide those quarterly updates to you in meetings such as this at least 3 times a year, if not 4, as we did last month or the last quarter of last year. In terms of the update from items left over from last year, there were 3 that were incomplete due to the pandemic and other priorities that emerged at the end of 2021. And 2 of those are now complete. We established the pre-approved ADU plans and the housing survey. And the last item that we're planning to bring back to you in December or January is the wrap up to the general plan authorization process that the council did a study session on about 2 months ago, I believe it was. It was during my tenure, August 17th, there it is, right on the slide. So those are the three. There were a couple of other outstanding items from last year. I know the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan, we finished in July, but we're just checking these off so we can be solely attentive to the new work program for the current year, which is what I would like to focus on now. So here is the Q1 update. I'm not going to walk through all of the items on the list, but while our attachment A to the staff report lists all of the work program items in priority order, for this presentation, I've listed them by department because as your manager who's having to manage the workflow of the city along with all of the other ongoing business, we really do that by departments because we have a finite number of staff. So it's a little bit of load balancing between the departments. I can't ask the IT staff to go do the Memorial Park water ponds, and I can't ask Tom Chin from our Emergency Services Office to go do the Senior Center surveys. It's really staff structuring by departments. So I'm presenting these work program elements in priority order within departments, just so you can see how the work clusters around. So here for the City Manager's Office, we have the new commissions and committees item that you'll see crossover in many departments, but specifically for the Manager's Office is Economic Development and the Emergency Response Council. However, I will be bringing to your next council meeting on the 16th this item for all of the commission and committee work program items that the council has put forward. So for where you see this through the rest of the presentation, they're coming back on the 16th. The one I wanted to highlight here was the Climate Action Plan, in that we are making considerable progress. We've done a wide array of public outreach. We've had over 1,000 unique visitors to our interactive engagement website. We've had 126 people attend at least one workshop, and we've had 170 people ask a question or left an idea on our webpage or took a survey. And we're planning to come to you on November 16th as well with a high-level overview of where we're going so we can move to the data crunching and writing part of the Climate Action Plan. But we didn't want to start that work effort till you've gotten the big picture of what the public input has been on the Climate Action Plan and to give us your blessing to proceed in that direction. The economic development items under the City Manager's Office are now under the purview of our new Economic Development Manager. So we're really just starting on those work items now with her coming on board in October. For innovation technology, the Lehigh and Stevens Creek, that's an ongoing project. It's 25% done because we're 25% of the way through the year. 27 and 28 are actually going together, and 27 was described in the highlight portion of the staff report, where for both of these, we've targeted 4 intersections to attempt and test new technologies for broader deployment based on the product of the test. Moving on, community development has a heavy workload. And while RENA was not a numbered priority, I put it at the top of the list just based on prior council discussion. The state requirements on RENA and the amount of work and public engagement it entails is probably the mega #1 priority of the entire list, in that we are under state obligation to get it done, and your community demands that it be done very well. So we put that at the top of the list. But I also graphically wanted to show how workload of the city changes, in that after the state adopted SB 9 just a month and a half ago, that became a whole new work program that was never considered by the council last May. But it had to move up to take a large share of both your city attorney and our planning manager's time to prepare for the study session you had tonight, to work with our companion agencies on how they're approaching the SB 9 challenges, and to prepare the urgency ordinance that's coming back for you on December 7th. We then have the homeless jobs program in the city plan to end homelessness. I wanted to highlight, as Councilmember Willie mentioned at the last council meeting, we have engaged West Valley Community Services to identify 2 of the 159 previously identified homeless residents in Cupertino, and that 159 is based on the 2019 homeless count that was done countywide. So that number is old, and it won't be updated till end of second quarter next year as the county does another census of homeless. But the homeless jobs program is launching as we speak with West Valley Community Services and the city plan to end homelessness. We've just brought on our contractor to help us draft that strategic plan for the city's long-term engagement on homelessness. I'll move on to Parks and Recreation, the senior strategy I mentioned earlier, that we're starting our community survey to assess the needs and understanding of current senior services. The mental health support, we embedded some of the suicide prevention policy and proclamation that was adopted last month, as well as other resources under the city website. We had a low priority that we were able to check off early with the dogs off leash area, and that there was just such strong support from the DOLA champions and the Parks and Recreation Commission. Rather than continuing the pilot, the director chose to just bring forward the administrative regulations so that we could make that an ongoing program and have a more community-based response. We try not to do this, but there are a few projects that overlap departments. And clearly when you're doing park improvements, the customer of those improvements is Parks and Recreation, but the provider of the improvements is Public Works. So we've listed both the Memorial Park and the Lawrence Mitty projects here under both of those departments. And you will see these highlight in the upcoming preview of the next quarter as well. In terms of Public Works, the priority number 1 was the single-use plastics ordinance and education that has already been going forward, and the Mayor's Cup Challenge event that's coming forward early in the new year with the opening of the new library. 5G remains a concern of the community and council, and the ordinance, we've done the research, we're looking at bringing the ordinance back through the city attorney's office and Public Works no later than first quarter of next year, and we are trying to move that as quickly as we can. The shuttle bus pilot program has already been implemented and restarted. A question did come in from a council member about how seniors get their discount, and that answer to that question was provided in the supplemental report and is also available on our website. Municipal water system, the council just took action to move that priority number 25 ahead. Now here's the preview for the next quarter that we'll be coming back to report to you on at your first meeting in February. I've listed here just the top 10 priorities in numerical order, as well as other items we know will be of interest to the council. And it's the single-use plastics we've talked about. In that first quarter of the calendar year will be the Mayor's Cup Challenge event. And then in the second quarter of the calendar year, or the fourth quarter of this fiscal year, is when we'll be implementing the single-use plastics ordinance and doing the education with our businesses and residents about how the ordinance will go into effect. We are hoping to bring forward through the housing element sites discussion, as well as RFP and working with our partners, be it a service club or the county, affordable housing options, either on Mary Avenue, at the old restaurant site, or at the Simeon property, both of which were discussed by council at a closed session or at a study session in July. 5G, I've already mentioned, the senior strategy is underway. We are continuing our Lehigh and Stevens Creek quarry monitoring because of the importance of that to the council. Homeless jobs program is underway. City plan to end homelessness. We should be starting to see some outreach efforts coming together with that over the course of this next quarter as our contractor comes on board with subsequent discussion with commissions in the next calendar year. Memorial Park improvements I won't discuss here because I know there'll be likely council questions on it, and so we'll save that for the end of the presentation. New commissions I've mentioned are coming back to the council next meeting. Shuttle bus I've mentioned, Lawrence Smitty will talk later, and that is really the preview of the work that's underway now to drive the highest priorities ahead early in the fiscal year. I did want to share with you just a little bit of some work I did as a consultant for the last 5 years that I've been able to bring here to Cupertino. We often think of organizational constraints primarily in terms of staff or money, but what we've realized is it's actually a much bigger challenge. As I started off this discussion, it's kind of the iceberg model of organizational constraints, that most of our ongoing day-to-day work is kind of not what the work program focuses on. But when you look at our organization of 200 employees, 180 of them are really in ongoing day-to-day services delivery. And it's really the managerial 20 to 25 positions that work on the priorities adopted by the council. Sometimes working on those priorities could be supervising some staff work as growth opportunities that's in the blue box. Oftentimes it's overseeing and supervising consultants we engage to take on new efforts and initiatives. But what we've found through the work I did with my prior firm is this model of 15 to 20% being available for new high priorities versus the 80 to 85% of the budget and the staff that's just doing day-to-day service delivery. It applies against all elements of the organizational capacity. Financial, I'll start in the middle. Most of our money, it goes for staffing as a city, and most of that staffing is doing day-to-day service delivery. Fortunately, you have a very wise work program system in where you try to capture calculated costs for items, so you do that work program development in line with your budget and attuned to the financial resources and needs of the city. So you're managing your financial capacity well in terms of that being a constraint on work program work. Your staff is feeling a bit overwhelmed, as I discussed in the staff report, largely because of a number of critical vacancies. I must say having turnover at both the manager and the attorney creates relationship building, knowledge transfer, learning about systems, getting new systems in place. But for every department except information technology, we also have some critical staff vacancies that we're having to manage around and through. And that's just part of it. I did want to pause here one moment. There was a newsletter that came out today that appeared to be faulting the council for not having management experience, when what I found troublesome about that is that's not the council's job. The council represents the community and provides the policy direction to staff and sets the very priorities that you've done through the work program. And then it's your manager, your attorney, and the staff we hire that's responsible for managing the projects and delivering on the direction you've provided. So I did want to clarify that from the newsletter I saw today. But we've also realized through my work with 50 cities over the last 6 years is that council have constraints as well. All your work has to be done in public sessions or in a few limited items or closed session. It's best to have a few priorities you're focused on to run efficient and effective meetings so you're able to make quick and clear decisions, as you did tonight on two very big issues, SB 9 and the water lease. You provided clear direction on issues that in other cities might have taken multiple meetings to work through, but you were able to drive those ahead. and that's how you manage the workload. One issue that's emerged over the last 5 years is community-based divisiveness, and it's almost some of the divisiveness we've seen at the federal or state levels are now permeating local communities, and that just makes decision-making slower as well. I think land use, growth, and development issues centered not just around Valco, but even tonight around Main Street and Bate Brothers. It's clearly an issue of focus and concern in the community that requires attention and is basically limiting some of our organizational capacity because each of those items take more time than they would otherwise, but it's time well spent given the needs and priorities of this council and community. And the external box on the far right is just what we face from other levels of government, be it the state, putting new regulations on us, CEQA requirements, natural events like a pandemic has dramatically changed the scope of our work over the last year and a half. And it's going to change our work over the next 6 months, we believe, as the city hopefully continues to reopen. And we're having to keep some of the tools and strengths we've learned from remote working and Zoom and the like, and maybe have some new customer service improvements that come out of that, but also get to a fully robust Parks and Recreation program next summer that hopefully is less constrained by COVID. And that's going to be relaunching that work just like we've done with the VIA shuttle. So I've gone a little bit over my time, Mr. Mayor, so I tried to speak really fast, but I did want to highlight the next steps. The quarterly updates will continue. That's a best practice that you've already done with your work program system. Per a council member request, I started at your last meeting doing a single item update at each council meeting just so the public sees that the council and your staff are continuously moving the priorities ahead. And then we'll be back to you with a dashboard update in January for Q2 and a presentation to council like this in early February. And just to warn you, this is a never-ending treadmill. We're starting to reach out now to your commissions to get their ideas for next year's work program for your consideration next April and May with your new city manager. So that concludes the staff report. We're available for questions. To make it easier to see, I'll stop the share. And Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Greg. That's perfect. And you know, your messages are all heard. Your work is appreciated. Staff's work's greatly appreciated. I mean, I will just remind everyone that what's behind me is what used to be De Anza Boulevard. So in a few short years, you know, we do get a lot done, irrespective of whether, you know, we're 80%, you know, going day to day or 15%, you know, here and there on special projects. So I really do think the point is heard. We're all working together and just, you know, there's a collaborative push-pull all the way through. Let me go to our members of the public first, since especially, you know, with here, this is not an action item, or it is an action item, but it's an update. And so we can get feedback and questions and follow-ups from council once we hear from members of the public. We have one hand raised from Jennifer Griffin, and I'll remind everyone that as soon as Jennifer gets done speaking, you'll have to have your hand up by that time in order to get in line to speak on this item number 13. And so everyone will have 3 minutes. Right now we have Jennifer Griffin as well as Francis Hu. I will also remind the members of the public that following this item, we have continued oral communications, at which point I'll open it back up because it does look like we'll have additional time in case anyone wants to continue on that. So Jennifer, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. Mr. Larson, thank you very much for a very, very thoughtful, well-researched presentation. I cannot agree with you more. There are parameters that are going on in the city from the time that Darcy's got the orchard behind him, the highway, Sunnyvale Cemetery. God. You know, I will tell you right now that I had a perfectly miserable summer based from these housing bills. I spent many hours of my time away from my family, calling on the phone pointlessly to our our state legislators with nothing. I felt like it did no good. They voted en masse on the housing bills. They did not listen to the public. Therefore, there will be repercussions. I am concerned about the future of my country from what happened on January 6th with the attempted takeover of Washington, D.C. We had to deal with COVID, and yet our state, our legislators, our governor do not understand the things that the public have been going through. We all had to worry about our family members being vaccinated, getting COVID, traveling. I missed my niece's marriage a year ago in Oregon because we could not go up there. That's why I was up there this last weekend, her 1 year anniversary. My two nieces. So I feel that, yes, divisiveness issues, the land use growing, the city council, the staff are overwhelmed because there is a complete irresponsibility at the state level that they have allowed things like the runaway RENA and the housing bills to take center stage of life in California. I am scared to death and petrified about SB 910. I should not be living that way, and I should not have to spend my time attempting to validate my lifestyle in my neighborhood as a sixth generation Californian. I am mad. I am angry at the legislators in California. The only people I trust are my local city council, my mayors, people maybe in the county. But I feel like California at the state level has lost its way. And yes, nobody is paying our staff the overtime, the trauma, their families, etc., to take care of these problems that have been foisted upon us. And I really, really have a problem when the state level trivializes these things that they have let come down irresponsibly to cause mayhem at the city level. I hold state responsible. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, our next speaker is Francis Hu. Welcome, Francis.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody to stay this late to listen to my voice. My name is Francis, and I'm a City of Cupertino resident and parent of Ragnar student. I urgently ask you to support to save our school and take immediate action to stop CUSD decision to close our city school.
This is not the item. I will call on you on our next item, which is continued oral communications. Okay, so let's go back to council on this. Like stated previously, this is not an item where we're asking for a staff recommended motion. The recommended action is to receive the city work program Q1 update. However, let me go ahead and allocate some time to council if we have follow-up questions or comments on City Manager Larson's presentation. And so let's go ahead and start with 5 minutes, and hopefully, we can respect the very good curation of the presentation provided by Greg, and make our questions and comments similarly concise. So I see a hand raised by Councilmember Willie.
Yeah. So thank you, Greg, for that update. This is new, getting these quarterly updates, and I like that verbiage that you used, and that is, things take time, but it's time well spent. And I really believe this is time well spent for us and the community. Okay, that being said, first question is under community development, item number 2, ELI and VRM. It'd sure be nice if we could hear the status, some type of status on the Mary Street project. If you're not able to do it tonight and want to do it at one of the council meetings in your one item update for council meeting, but I think that's a pretty important one.
On page 168 of the agenda packet, we do have the simple table from the dashboard that provides the update of what's been completed and in progress for all of it. We also have the Director of Community Development here who could either provide a brief response tonight or we could respond to all of these requests in writing later.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for the community to hear. I mean, the Mary Street project, I think, is pretty important. You know, I mean, where are we? You know, the Rotary is bringing forth this type of project. Previously, the city was defining who owns that piece of property on Mary Street. I mean, what kind of update do we have? How far along have things moved?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and City Manager Larson, if I may respond to Councilman Willie's question very briefly here. So the Mary Avenue application project, as you mentioned, Councilman Willie, I'm sorry, am I coming in okay, voice-wise?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate that. So community development staff and public works staff have been working sort of behind the scenes, like Councilman Willie had mentioned, just identifying ownership boundaries of the site. So that's been identified. Public works staff has also laid out the improvement plan for the public right-of-way, the right-of-way space of that site, and identifying a sufficient development area for the proposal for the property. Beyond that, we've also reached out to affordable housing components in the community, understanding the needs of the community. And soon we'll have a preparation of parcel map, and we'll come into City Council for that map and preparation approval, as well as a potentially a general plan amendment to identify the project for housing. And then we'll send out for an RFP and seek project proposals coming in through the pipeline. So that's generally sort of the process, and that's what we're working on right now.
Great. Next one I'll touch on, the homeless jobs program number 6. And there I think it's just a point of clarification. You know, you made the reference of 159 homeless county-wide. The jobs program is specific for Cupertino, for the homeless. All homeless are important. There is no question about it. All homeless are important. But the Cupertino jobs program for 2 homeless people will be 2 homeless people that are residing within Cupertino, not to be confused with a much larger population.
And I'm sorry if I misspoke, because there's certainly far more homeless in the county than 159. There were 159 identified in Cupertino in 2019. And we don't know that number now for Cupertino. I think there's some suspicion that the number's gone up during the pandemic, but we won't know till the census is conducted next year. And Mr. Mayor, as council members raise questions on other projects, what I might do is just quickly highlight that the homeless jobs program is on page 7 of attachment A to the staff report, or it's page 173 of the full agenda packet, just so members of the public and the other council can find the item we're speaking to easily.
Absolutely. Thank you, City Manager Larson. And so, John, you're right at the 5 minutes. I just wanted to go ahead and, give equal time to everyone.
Okay.
I'll probably push you over, some of my time at the end.
Okay.
And so let's go ahead and go to Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I first really want to thank the staff for the quarterly report, and I think it's really great for the public and the council members to learn. And then thanks, Greg, City Manager Greg, Interim City Manager Greg, for a very good report. I'd like to follow up with the question I asked and then the answers that we received about the staff's 80% work on the items that, in addition to the work plan, what their staffing time. I asked what are the other things that other referrals and work items
that in addition to the work plan that the staff does day to day or adding to their work plan. So the answers I got, I'm really pleased to know the answers. That for residence issues reported to the Public Works Department, I asked them, what's the percentage? How many cases are there? So the answers from the staff is about 100 to 175 are received monthly. And so it estimates 30% of the service staff time to address just the residence report to Public Works. For example, Cupertino 311 or code enforcement issues, flooding, crime issues. So these are, in addition to day-to-day, they are handling a lot of service our residents inquiries and issues. So and then for a lot of the Park and Recreation Department, what does the Park and Recreation Department receive for code enforcement like park usage? And the answer is about 20 to 40 are received monthly. And so estimate of 20% of the department staff to work on these issues with the residents directly. Because we know it personally, because we receive a lot of residents' input and we forward to the city manager, to the appropriate staff to handle it. I actually personally have met with our code enforcement in our residents to work on the neighbors' issues. So our staff, in addition to the day-to-day work, they also handle a lot of residents' report, complaints, and they really serve our residents really, really well. So thanks, Greg, for getting the staff to answer my questions. That's it, Mayor.
And that information was in the supplemental report that went out to council and on the city website last night. We did get some additional information from Community Development Department. They received roughly 130 to 140 customer requests every month. Primarily those are through 311, but also phone calls and emails. And those consume almost all of the code enforcement staff time, because code enforcement is that customer response function.
Great. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Councilmember Way. 3 minutes remaining on your time. Let's go on to Councilmember Moore, followed by Vice Mayor Chow, and then back to Councilmember Willie.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. And I do want to thank staff for putting together the dashboard, and I hope people are going to it. And I appreciate all the screenshots that you have. And the new page regarding mental health support. I feel bad for all of the communities that are that have taken on the SB 9 issue, because like us, it's an extra item. And like we heard for Campbell, there's the potential of having an organization come and sue them, which is, an added stress. And I've mentioned this before, I would like to know what the legal costs have been across the state from the implementation of the housing bills, and then alternatively, what could we have built with that money if we're to have gone to affordable housing rather than all of the litigation that we've had instead. I do have one question, and I have kind of brought it up internally with regards to that ADA compliance issues and how can that be addressed, because it did show up in the Moss Adams risk assessment. And one suggestion I had is that we would have essentially an ADA spearhead person on staff. I don't know how it would move forward to address that. And then there's also like website Section 508 issues and things of that nature, as opposed to having it be like a work item for us.
It's not in the work program as we've discussed. However, it is an issue of ongoing attention and focus for every community because of a societal need and priority. Our city attorney did identify that Mr. Stillman down in Public Works at one point was the city's ADA coordinator. I'll ask Director Lee if that's still the case. And Bill from Information Technology, I don't know if you're able to respond yet on the ADA accessibility review you've started for our web pages, or will that be an item to come back later? So Roger, Bill, those two questions for you.
Yes, thank you, Interim City Manager Greg. It's David Stillman, our transportation manager. He is our ADA coordinator for the city, and we do have an ADA transition plan that we. I don't recall the year. I think it's up to be reviewed again, but we do look at that plan for every improvement that we do to see what that recommends.
Then Mayor, Councilmember Moore, this is Bill Mitchell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the city. We are looking at ADA concerns. We continually look at ADA compliance and ensuring that we do that. However, I'd like to tell you that although it's not on the city work program, it is on the IT strategic plan to implement a new website this year. So we will start the design and work on that after the new year. And of course, ADA will be one of the items that we ensure are met.
Oh, wow, that's excellent to hear. Will this be done in-house, by the way?
So we don't develop in-house. So what we'll do is we will, currently we have a product from Vision Technology. We'll probably go out for an RFP on the website to assist us with the design and the build of the system itself. And then we will maintain it internally as far as content. The actual framework of the work is not. I noticed that you mentioned Pasadena. Pasadena has 16 people in their IT group. Probably 5 of them are committed to the website. We do not have one person committed to the website. So we find it more cost effective to outsource that service.
Yeah, excellent, and I understand that, and their budget was about 7 times larger than ours. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That's exciting to see that's underway. Thank you.
Yeah. I will point out, doing the new transition plan, that may be something staff would be bringing forward to council for consideration for next year's work program, because that would be a pretty big project that the council would want to pay attention to. And I believe our prior transition plan dates back to 2015, 2016. So as Roger mentioned, it is timely to look at updating that again, given new standards and priorities. However, using parks as an example, it is in the Parks Master Plan that accessibility will be designed into all new park features. So even the tot lot we brought forward to council last month included an accessible feature, and that's above and beyond the all accessible park that will be coming back as well. So.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Councilmember Moore. That's your 5, and we'll go on to Vice Mayor Chow.
Hello, hi. Thank you for the attachment A, which gives a very clear picture for each project, which stage they are and when they will go to the next stage. I wonder, is from the website, is there a way to print this PDF out? Because I couldn't figure out a way to do that. Maybe if there's a way, you can tell me later. And so I'd like to point out that for the I think low income strategy, that item has been on the council agenda since before I was on the council. At that time, the item was to include the extremely low income percentage in the BMR ordinance, and that has, I think the council has confirmed we would like to do that since I was on the council. But it seems that item somehow did not get done, and now this item has been expanded into including Mary, including other projects, but the original intent wasn't there anymore. So now that we are doing general plan update, I hope that we consider adding requirement for extremely low income percentage units for in our general plan updates. A second point is I don't see an update of the CIP project, so I wonder if the quarterly update could include the CIP projects also. And then another thing that I have kept asking is the council allocated like 200,000 for safe route to school projects, and I think another 200,000 for like park, small improvements in parks. But we don't ever get updates once we have an annual allocation. So it would be nice if we also get that update of this annual allocation, because once it's annual, we especially need transparency on that. And then, like Councilmember Wei mentioned, I think Greg mentioned also 80% of the city's resources is on day-to-day business. But as council members, we don't have visibility like on how busy the code enforcement officers are and how much service costs are different. So it might be nice to have some kind of update on this 80% big chunk of the city services that we are providing. That's good for us to know, and I think for citizens to know also. And another thing is for the Torrey Avenue project, I see that in the different phases that's planned, nowhere it's mentioned it will come to the council for direction on how would we utilize this new building. My understanding is this is a brand new building we purchased. Shouldn't the use of that building, the direction should come from the council, but from the description right now, I don't think that would come to the council for direction. If you can clarify that. And another thing is priority number 3 is 5G. I assume that the items are listed according to the priorities by the council, right? So number 3 is 5G. However, that item has very little progress. I wonder what's the holdup. But that's it so far. I have more. Are you keeping track?
Are you talking to me? Yeah, you're about 4. Then yeah.
Oh, I mean, Greg, would you?
So, Greg, if you want me to jump in, I'll address the 5G. I mean, part of the holdup is the city attorney's office. So I need to be fully involved in the drafting of that ordinance with Roger's staff, and that's something that I will be doing in house, and so I have committed to doing that and making rapid progress through all of those elements in the first quarter of 2022, after the first of the year, with support from Roger and his staff.
Okay. So how about Torrey Avenue project?
Yes, Vice Mayor. I'm looking at page 39 of attachment A, and it is understood that we would be coming back to council to share all of our outreach efforts and to get direction from you. From the schedule, implementing the public outreaches in April of next year, going through it's like August, and then we'd be initiating the design phase in that time period. So I would expect during that time we would be seeking council input as to the outreach received and then direction from council as well.
Okay, Vice Mayor, I've lent you about a minute of my time, and so let's go back to Councilmember Willie, and I'll do the same for you, John. But I'd like to ask that you preserve a little bit of time for. Thank you.
I'll try to be quick. So again, thanks for the update, Greg. The one I would like to comment, though, hopefully for the future, and that is, by telling a key date will help put things in perspective for the community. The jobs program, when I attended the meeting, they said the objective is to get the 2 homeless people on the work program by the end of November. Letting the community know something like that, wow, it's not just talked about, they'll be put to work. For the Mary Street, some type of number that could say, we expect the Rotary's plan to be coming to the planning department on this day, or at the very least, in 2022. Again, letting them know that, wow, this is going to happen. And Memorial Park, wow, dead ponds since 2013. A target, wow, we're going to try and get those ponds filled before the end of 2022. those types of dates, I think, would go a long way to helping the community see progress. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Well timed. You're leaving me with about 3 minutes. I'll cede over a bit of time to you, Vice Mayor, at the end. I'll just talk about a project that is not in the top 10, but one that I am focused on. Lawrence Committee, item number 11, super paginated, page 184 of the omnibus packet, page 18 of attachment A. I do have a question about how it's being classified here. There seems to be under task, research, outreach, planning phase, execution phase, and closing processes. It seems to me that, and actually I'm on page 19, not 18. This is the master plan. And that would be research, procurement, outreach, planning phase, design phase, execution phase, and closing processes. Is this all related to design and design only? Because I noticed that the last task ends on March 15th, 2023, which of course is about, like 15 or 16 months out from now. So I'm wondering, is that basically what we're in for the next year and 4 months? Essentially just design, or is there any actual construction being contemplated within that period of time?
Roger, Joanne?
Yes, I mean, that would be, that is outreach, community outreach, the time needed to get back to council and to complete the design there.
Okay, so the answer is that's all just design. There's no construction happening here. Where are we on the next page, the next natural page, which would of course be construction and implementation? Does that page not exist yet? Or does it exist except we're just waiting for a bit for the design?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, once the master plan is complete, the design will be complete. And so, prior to these dates, being achieved, we would be coming into council in one of our fiscal year CIP requests for the construction.
Okay, so you've got an estimated budget of $5.4 million. How much is this going to be allocated to design as opposed to the construction and delivery of the space?
It's not known right now, Mayor Paul. We have gone through a qualification process with the design consultants. We're getting a proposal back. We have a selected consultant, and we're just going through the negotiation of that proposal.
Okay.
I do expect that to come to council as early as December, no later than January.
Yeah, I'm wondering, okay, well, fair enough. Okay, so if you look at the very end of this paper, between June 22nd and August 2nd, we're finalizing the design phase, which makes sense. It says execution phase, but then there is basically a 5-month gap, right, between August 2nd and January 16th. And it just says closing processes. You've got 2 months for closing processes. I'm just wondering, why is there basically like 7 months where, something happens after finalizing the design phase? What's the idea here? Why is it needed to close out the design phase and wait 5 months after the finalization of the design phase? What is that about?
I would have to check with the project manager to know for certain. It could be just the environmental and the permits that would be needed prior to going out to construction, prior to going out to bid.
Okay.
But I mean, it's we would want to execute as soon as we have a design. Get council's authority, get out to bid.
Right. I mean, I'm following the timetable up until August 2nd, but then there's that 5-month gap, and then another 2 months, and just not really clear on what's happening in that period of time. But up to 1.7.
We'll get back with an answer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what's that?
We'll get back with an answer on that.
Okay.
We'll get back with an answer on that.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Roger. Really appreciate it. And so that's my time. Well, given the fact that we're doing this on a quarterly basis, and, I'm really, appreciative of the fact that, Greg, you've fantastically put together a program for us. You make absolutely legitimate points. I think one day we should certainly be awarded for the process that we've implemented. There's just been so much engagement. I don't know of any city that manages to bring all these various elements of commissions and public input into this centralized document. Vice Mayor Chow, I know I promised you some of the time, and so with the leave of the rest of council, I'd like to provide perhaps a minute or so if you wanted to do a follow-up at this point.
Okay, just one item, the number 12, development accountability. This item has been on the council agenda since 2019. It has made no progress, and now the progress seems to be, again, there will be no progress until March. But what we have seen today is the beta project will have the 30-day note, the 30-day period to raise any concern for inconsistency with general plan has elapsed. And this is not the first time. The same thing happened for the Westport project when the inconsistency with the BMR ordinance for the inclusionary 15% inclusionary requirement for all housing types. It was not raised as an issue within 30 days. And then after that, the city cannot challenge that anymore. So I think we need to at least address this issue individually so that this doesn't happen again. Maybe this whole process of accountability, it has been there for so many years, and maybe it's too complex. It just never gets done.
Okay. Thanks, Vice Mayor. I think your point's made. And then, Greg, you have your hand raised. Did you want to respond?
Oh, a very quick response. This is just one I wanted to use an example on. We have had a senior planner vacancy in the community development department for quite a while. And then when we had to divert our planning manager, Pew, to focus on SB9 as a new major project, it's those sorts of impacts that cause items like this to slow down. Plus, I think we need a little more clarity on what it is. When I first saw it on the work program, I said, what is it? I didn't really understand it. It's not a model that I've seen in many other cities, so there's not good comps to draw upon. So we're kind of developing something new here. I see Ben's come on the screen. He may have a more optimistic answer than I just shared.
I can certainly add if it's all right, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, of course, Director Fu.
Thank you, sir. To Mr. Interim City Manager Larson's comment, that's exactly spot on. We also, your plan division team has 8 positions. So 3 of those 8 have gone through a roving vacancy, if you will. And so this project, while it did start in 2019, it sort of has changed a little bit. And also with the change in the staff, 3 of those positions, actually 2 to 3 actually changed over twice. So there's been a significant change in your staffing. Also, 2 is when we're really getting down to the project, as you can see in 2020, starting with research to coordinate with the neighboring jurisdictions and part of our research. That's when COVID really hit. And so we other cities weren't as fortunate as us to be able to work remotely as quickly as we are. So that sort of stalled a little bit. And then with losing the staff and other items continue to move at a much faster pace, we just weren't able to staff for this particular position. Also with the comments that Mr. Larson mentioned about planning manager and senior planner, that really played into a part as well. But I'm hopeful that by the end of the year, you will see those vacancies filled, and hopefully we'll be able to limit any more turnover. And I anticipate that we will be able to jumpstart this item by the end of the year, if not first of 2022. We should be able to make some lightning progress, as you will see when we report back.
Okay, so we've got Greg, and did you want to?
I just had one other response to another council question.
Okay.
The CIP dashboard was just posted today. And so it wasn't part of the work program update, since that's a separate system. But the dashboard for the CIP went up today and will be updated monthly, so you can check the status of CIP projects.
Okay, great. So Councilmember White, did you want to say something?
Yeah, do I have a couple minutes? I just want to.
Let me take a look. Oh yeah, you actually do. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I just want to, because I keep on hearing, I just maybe want to make an observation comment, because I'm kind of new. I was elected about a year ago, less than a year ago. So I continue to hear that this work program's been 2019 hasn't been done. It looks like, some work programs being postponed for a long time, year after year. From this short experience, I could see other jobs, other projects just jumped ahead. For example, the density bonus, ordinance that jumped ahead of everything. And then now we have SB 9 and the housing elements and all the things that my sort of understanding when I hear from my 1 year experience is, it seems like we continue to have more important projects that jumped ahead of some work programs. So some work programs just get pushed back for a long time. And short of staff changing maybe added to that. So I understand. And then, 80% of our staff time is for day-to-day. Then we have another 20-30% that goes to residents complaint, residents enforcement issues. So I think we maybe short of staff plus short of consistent experienced staff maybe have contributed to this. So that's just my observation comment for the 1 year that almost 1 year that I've been on council. So I'm not sure if this is right on spot or maybe there's something, but this is how I been hearing and seeing. So that's my observation comment.
Yeah. Okay, great. Really appreciate it. I'm going to close this out and, thank you for implementing this on a quarterly basis. This is very new, and I'll just mention that there are 3 things I think that we need to focus on. This is ultimately about 3 things. It's about workflow, it's about transparency, and it's about efficacy. And the Vice Mayor and I, when it comes to workflow adjustments, you're talking about several, like a dozen different commissions and committees. We were able to put them on a lockstep on an annual basis and kind of conform them into a work plan, right? And so it was kind of a fight every step of the way with regard to making sure that we stick to the work plan. And so the product that you have in front of you, the professional, full-time paid, benefited pensioned employees, they are working at the behest of the public, and everyone knows that. But at the same time, there is a tendency over time, right, to basically say, look, we're the full-time people, and ultimately everything ends up being more consistent through us. I really think that there are some adjustments that are necessary to make because we're all a bit of a work in progress. But when you look at the fact that administratively you've got a dozen different commissions and committees, and they were all on a kind of a different schedule, it's these facets and details that are kind of low-hanging fruit that you can work out and get that, kind of straightened out and correct. Now, when you're talking about the rest of it and making sure that, priorities get, moved up, a lot of that, it's people, right? I mean, it's the fact that, these are projects and we're not robots and, we're not, certain processes are going to be subject to the fact that people have conversations. Someone wants to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, how you doing? I think this project would be great to do." I think it's just a matter of making things very clear and transparent, and trying to make sure that we understand that, like I say, this is what it looked like, in 1948 when Boris moved here, right? So stuff will get done. I mean, take heart. It's not one of these kind of things where we're going to end up saying, "Oh, it absolutely has to get done. How dare you not finish this?" I mean, it's a constant push. But I think that using that example of Vice Mayor and I, working very closely with staff over the course of several months to get those processes specifically with the commissioner handbook as well as the various policies that affect the council workflow. We're here today, and so it's not on any one person; it's on the whole group of us. But I think that it's hard to find a set of work plan items that can parallel what Cupertino is very ambitiously putting forward, even in this documentation right now. And so I'm really pleased by the progress, quite frankly. And I think that we have a skeletal framework of a lot of these things that are written down. Again, thank you, Greg, for all the effort that you've put forward. I mean, great documents, here on this item. And, there's a reason that we're at approximately 10 o'clock right now, and we've gotten so much done this evening. And, a lot of it is the foresight and the work that's gone in. So, with that, we'll, leave it to your successor to give us the Q2 update. And Greg, did you want to close this out before we move on?
I just wanted to thank all the department heads who really drive the work ahead and juggle the priorities on a day-to-day basis for their staff between a 311 call, an upcoming commission meeting, an upcoming council meeting, somebody out sick or on vacation. It's Ben, Roger, Bill, Katie, Diane, Joanne, and Christina, who do that heavy lift every day to keep the city's day-to-day work and its special projects all moving forward in the face of some days seem like insurmountable challenges. So,
Absolutely.
So kudos to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of us who sit here and have garnered enough votes to be in these seats, I'm sure, extend all of our kudos to you and staff as well. So we really appreciate this. We're at item 13, lucky 13. We are going to go back to oral communications. And so as promised to the members of the public, if anyone would like to speak at this point, please feel free to raise your hand. I will call you out by name because I know you've been waiting. Francis Hu, you have your hand raised. This is the full 3 minutes. If anyone else would like to speak on items not on the agenda, this is continued oral communications from the beginning of our meeting. Welcome, Francis. You'll have the 3 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for staying so late to listen to my voice. I actually appreciate that. I'm a resident of City of Cupertino and a parent of Regna Elementary School student. I want to take this opportunity to ask support from City Council to take immediate action to rescind CUSD's decision to close our school Regna. The decision of CUSD to close our school is really ridiculous, awful, and inhuman during this pandemic time. I agree with arguments of other Regna parents, but I want to focus my argument on the traffic impact to our children and to our community because of this decision. I'm very shocked to learn that CUSD had never ever conducted any transportation study related to school closure before the decision was made on October 14th board meeting. Regna parents have been begging CUSD for traffic study in the past more than 12 months, but no action has been done by CUSD so far. One parent leader shared an email with me that she sent to CUSD board members and superintendent back in October of 2020. At that email, he was questioned why no traffic study request has been sent to the city engineering department, why the city engineering and SR2S staff has not been consulted and has not been invited to working with them for the school closure decision-making process. The response from Superintendent Stacy is that they basically rely on CAC's understanding of traffic pattern for the assessment of transportation impact of this project, rather than rely on the city engineering's professional advice on assessment. This is ridiculous. And it's really a joke. I have been spending a lot of time reviewing the City of Cupertino transportation study guidelines in the past week. And I believe the school closure of Regna and the transfer of Regna part of Regna student to Lincoln Elementary School will generate more than 100 peak hour trips per day to that tri-school area. And on page 5 of City of Cupertino transportation study guidelines, I believe a tier 3 transportation study should be conducted to evaluate the projects consistent with the city's general plan, including its compliance with transportation standards set in the mobility element. And and it's consistent with the Santa Clara County Congestion Management Program. For the SQL analysis, if it should be done or not, I think I will leave City Council to decide. Maybe you should consult with your environmental legal counsel for that decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. Our next and final speaker on oral communications is Eunice. Welcome, Eunice.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for staying late. My name is Eunice Pang, and I'm a Regnart, Kennedy, and Monte Vista parent. I also have the honor of being the Regnart PTA co-president this year. I really appreciate everything the Cupertino City Council does to make Cupertino such a great city to live in. And to that point, I want to bring up how school closures are affecting Cupertino residents and Cupertino's reputation. My family moved to the Bay Area 3 years ago, and like many other families, we chose to live in Cupertino for the school district. This same school district is now the source of many jaded conversations. My youngest son is in 3rd grade. The last and only normal year my 3rd grader had was when he was in kindergarten. This year, the kids are all back in school, but it is not a normal year. We haven't gone on any field trips yet. Parents aren't allowed to walk their kids to their classrooms. We can't have large school gatherings, and principal coffees are all online. These are all the things I loved and appreciated, especially as a new parent to the district. I do understand declining enrollment, kids' resilience in moving to a new school and making new friends, and the importance of CUSD being fiscally responsible. However, I don't understand why CUSD made such a difficult, harmful, and unpopular decision when it's no longer a current budget problem. School closures have been discussed for many years at CUSD due to declining enrollment, but closing schools during a pandemic just does not make sense. For example, a campus of 350 students compared to 600 students has less students using the bathrooms, playgrounds, lunch tables, library. It's not that larger schools aren't safe, but merging schools during a pandemic would have major health concerns on top of the emotional concerns children are already facing. Currently, many of the students have to sit on the ground during lunch because social distancing at the lunch tables means that there aren't enough seats anymore. If you add 200 students to each receiving campus, all of these new students will have to sit on the ground during lunch, in addition to the ones who are already sitting on the ground. A corporation will close offices due to attrition from working remotely or downsizing, but a school can't be compared to a company. A school is service-oriented, and neighborhood schools provide the community with a measurable value. Besides the value that Regnart brings to our local community, there just isn't any need to close schools now. If CUSD could wait 2 more years, our declining enrollment won't be a budget problem. CUSD is projected to become a basic aid district, and the funding will increase from $8,500 per student to $13,000 per student. Financially, the outlook will be better, and the harmful and difficult decision of closing schools wouldn't even be considered. So by simply holding off on the decision to close schools during the pandemic, we will be able to see just how healthy CUSD is financially. Enough to give teachers their raises, to pay for rising retirement costs, to keep smaller schools open so that children can still walk to school and have the stability they need and crave. So I really thank you for your time to listen to my comments today and urge you to put CUSD school closures on the agenda for your next meeting so that as a council, you can help us speak to CUSD to halt their split vote decision to close our neighborhood schools. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're most welcome. Okay, now we're on to our last item before adjournment. This is council and staff comments along with future agenda items. Mr. City Manager, Greg, did you want to speak to any staff comments at this point before we turn it over to council for our comments and future agenda items?
Just as we try to schedule future items, know that we have a very long list of items already to be scheduled, plus referrals over the last 2 months. And I'm going to be trying to integrate those in ways that doesn't slow down any of the work program we just talked about tonight.
Great. Thank you, Greg. And let's go. I'm going to put a time limit on this. A couple minutes should do it for us, 10 minutes total. So Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great lead in, Eunice and Francis. Our community is very concerned. If it's a concern to the community, it's a concern to me. I think we need to have an agenda item or study session. I think we need to ask Jerry Liu, the board president, maybe to give the update this time instead of Stacy. And then we can be as knowledgeable as possible and hopefully offer some input and guidance. So I hope somebody else will second that so we can make this an agenda item.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow, followed by Councilmember Moore, and then Councilmember Way. Vice Mayor Chow.
First, I understand that the staffing limit for development accountability, but then I'd like to propose that the staff address the 30-day limit to challenge the general plan violations. And I actually already recommended to the prior city manager, Deb Fan, to have a list of a table of all objective standards so that each development has to submit a consistency analysis before they apply. And then the city staff can check off each item to see if they are consistent. This table actually was already partially available from the VOCO project. And so if that's a more specific goal, hopefully then that can prevent future general plan violations. And then I hope that we do consider a percentage of extremely low income in our general plan update next year. And I'd like to second Councilmember John Whaley's request for another agenda item. I'm sorry, but this is kind of urgent to consider writing a letter to CUSD for them to reconsider the decision of school closure, because both of the Cupertino school board members voted against this proposal, and the other 3 voted yes, so it's a very split vote. And then also the CEQA issue has not been studied, and in the end, it's problems that the city will have to end up to resolve. So I wonder whether there is the city could challenge that, because there is a prior. I think last year, the San Francisco city sued the San Francisco school district over school reopening issue. So maybe this is something Cupertino can consider. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor, that's a perfect 2 minutes there. Okay, Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Way.
Thank you. With regards to the CUSD issue, in our general plan, schools are mentioned about 167 times, and Regnart was listed as providing through a joint use agreement 3 acres of parkland for the community. So I do have some concern with that as well. And the relocation of students in the CLIP program from Meyerholtz, and what is the ultimate intention of that school site. We remember a few years ago with the Luther School that was going to be converted into housing by the same developer of the Valco project in Main Street. And so I do have some concern about whether or not there would be a potential ground lease in the future for that location, and you know, we need to know what the district is actually planning for there. And I could see this requiring a closed session discussion for what our options are moving ahead. With regards to the 30 days, I would like to see some notification to City Council when a project is like this is coming through, and I'm not sure that our hands are completely tied, that we can't do anything, but maybe that is the case. So I'd like to hear some more information about that. And down the street, also on Foothill, the ERC reviewed a project which was commercial and residential, and that project has over 4,000 square feet of retail in it. So it was a little disheartening to have one project have no retail, 9 units plus an ADU, and see the general plan designation for it, and see just down the street a kind of a similar situation, but that one did have retail. So some of the arguments for why the corner of Stevens Creek and Foothill wouldn't have it weren't terrific. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So yes, our residents' issues are our issues. And so CUSD issue is everyone, we're all residents too. What my question is for Chris, for our city attorney. CUSD is a another public agency, how much can we interfere with their board decisions? And we can certainly do our traffic studies. So that is an issue I like to see how far we can go and what can we do to help our parents. And the second comment I want is collaboration is always better than forcing something on another public agency. So I wonder if we can do more collaborative efforts than we want to help our residents, but also we want to work with our partnership agencies in our community.
Okay, great. Did you want to speak to that, City Attorney Jensen? With regard to-
Only to say that we could discuss those issues if and when the item is agendized.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wei. In terms of my follow-ups, I'll go ahead and confer with our city manager about the timing and scheduling, as well as the city attorney as necessary. And we'll talk about the potential future items to add to, the various other items on our upcoming agendas. So I think that we are at the end of our agenda this evening. Thank you very much for a really good discussion on all points, front to back. I will give a very brief update with regard to the city manager search. It has been very far-ranging. We've had many meetings. It's been a national effort. We've had excellent candidates, and hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be able to have this process come to a fruition in the relatively near term. That's what I'm at liberty to share at this point. We thank all of the members of the public for being interested and engaged. I see literally everyone here has over the years been highly committed to our community, and I thank you for that commitment. And I know that going forward, like I said, we've got workflow and transparency and advocacy, and when these three things wed, we're going to be able to deliver all sorts of really excellent measures, and ultimately they'll result in changes. I'm sure the orchardists thought that things were going way too slowly or rapidly, depending on who you were talking to, and yet here we are, right? And that's as we have living proof, that's within a single lifetime. So thank you very much. You're greatly appreciated. We'll see you in 2 weeks for our next regular scheduled city council meeting. That's November 16th. That'll start at 6:45 p.m. And until then, with regard to our regularly scheduled council meeting, and without further ado, I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:22 p.m. Thank you and good night. Meeting adjourned.